Alright, Doom v. Vamos v. Vamos Epicureans. This is Sunday, February 8th, 2026. This is the BCE Comics Pod Review Edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith. I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
I'm doing okay, except I had a sudden panic because the window I had with all of my notes is now gone. I don't know what happened. Oh, that's what happened. Okay. I found it, but things are not looking the way I want. You know, this is typical for us, right? We just get off to a weird start with everything.
We seem to have good luck with the X-Men issues, but then when we try and do these things full tilt, full review, all the technical problems crop up for some reason.
Yeah, maybe the problem is live streaming. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we should just be recording videos. Although the way we record the X-Men one-shots is just like live streaming, but you know, that's what it is. All right, so gosh, I was just thinking in my head, it's Super Bowl Sunday, but not that we need to really worry about that in comicsdom, and because my poor Broncos got unfairly beat, I'm going to be sore about that. Anyway, this month we are going to be reading Dark Avengers Modern Era Epic Volume 1. Now I'm holding mine up here because we've got... Stojr, you had a little bit of a different reading experience than I did. This is the actual volume, but Stojr, tell us what you've done.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, around the same time I was kind of getting into collecting omnibuses and collected editions, I was more focused on potentially custom binding the books that I have, in my long boxes and in my basement. Right, I have these long runs of Spider-Man and Captain America and things like that, and I was like, well, if I could just put them up on the shelf somehow, that would be really good. And there's a company, or there's probably a few printing companies that'll do that for you. So I sent away a couple of volumes at that time to a bindery. Right around the time I bought my house, and kind of in all the chaos, I just kind of sent them off and then got them returned. So this was around 2021, I think, is when I had it taken care of. So I had 5 volumes made at that time, and they were the Secret Warriors that I have here, and
Nice.
the dog is now barking because why not? I made the Dark Avengers into 2 volumes, and then I did Avengers: The Initiative into 2 volumes. I'm gonna have to go mute her for a second, so
Okay.
me for a second.
Sure, no problem. So, while Stojr takes care of the pets, his reading experience is going to be a little bit different than ours, but in this volume of the Epic Collection, the one that we have here collects Dark Avengers number 1 through 16 and Dark Avengers Annual number 1. We get the Dark Avengers Uncanny X-Men Utopia, Uncanny X-Men number 513 to 514, and Dark Avengers Uncanny X-Men Exodus. So basically there's a Dark Avengers X-Men crossover that happens in the middle of this book. What have you got in your book, Stojr?
Yeah, so sorry about that. So when I bound them, I wasn't sure about the size, right? So I really liked the way that this Secret Warriors came out. I got the whole run in here. It's a little thicker. It's obviously thicker than Epic Collections, but from a size perspective, it's still smaller because it's standard comic book size. With Dark Avengers, I was a little bit more cautious the first time I was doing it, so I split it into 2 volumes. In retrospect, especially with the Epic Collection being 1 volume, I kind of would have rather done it in a single volume, but I do like the way it came out. So what I had put into volume 1 of this was the Secret Invasion Dark Reign, Dark Avengers 1 through 6, the X-Men crossover that you mentioned, Dark X-Men The Confession, Dark X-Men The List, and then almost as bonus material I put in the Dark X-Men 1 through 3 miniseries. That's all in the first volume that I have. And as we go through it, I'll talk a little bit about where some of those maybe are just kind of extra, and some I actually think should be in the full-on Epic Collection. In the second volume, I put in Dark Reign, the Hood miniseries, Dark Avengers 9 through 12, Dark Avengers the Cabal, Dark Avengers Annual, Siege the Cabal, Dark Avengers 13 through 16, and then there was a Dark Avengers Files. So Dark Avengers Files was like those like handbook kind of bonus features and things like that. But actually, I'm really surprised they didn't put the Siege of the Cabal, and I guess the other one was the Dark Avengers of the Cabal, in there. And as we go through that, I'll talk a little bit about what those look like. Do you want me to go over to the other camera and kind of
Sure, if you
show
want
that show
to.
off the book real quick?
Yeah, if you want to show off those books real quick.
All right, let me see if I can do an on the fly adjust the camera to be full screen.
Oh,
Oh,
there
that
you go.
actually might have worked.
Yeah, that looks nice.
All right. So what I have going on over here, these are just kind of standard comics. They got cut down a bit, and I'm kind of stretching over a table here to kind of show what it looks like. So volumes 1 and volume 2, I never got dust jackets, so the that's on my to-do list to get some dust jackets for these. And I kind of went with like just standard, you know, full size shots, so to speak, for the covers because I always thought I would put dust jackets on. One thing I would say is that if I get the dust jackets for these, I would definitely put something on here that has the mapping, so I don't have to kind of go reinvent that every time. I did go with like end sheets on these. That's volume 2, so I'll start off with volume 1. I went with like white end sheets on these. I mean, I probably should have went with black end sheets, being it Dark Avengers. Um, it's got the original issues in here. It's got all the ads in here. It has what's it called?
Here,
It's got
push
a
that up a
little.
little bit more.
You see that? Okay.
Yeah, it's just the bottom's cut off, so push it up. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, sorry.
That's all good.
So it's got a little bookmark thing here included in it. And I mean, that's basically it. I mean, it's just kind of standard comics that are kind of cut to size. This is glued binding. You have different options with glued versus sewn binding and things like that. When you kind of do this stuff, you can get them to sort of custom design some things. It's relatively straightforward for the price, for what you're doing. But I actually like the way I have this mapped for the most part, over top of the Epic collection, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. But like there's minimal gutter loss, with these. It's actually pretty almost no gutter loss, I would say, going through this. So my main concern is just making sure that the binding holds up, and that if I need to, I'll just add some little, binding glue, or I think it's got a name, PVC glue or something like that. I forget, PVA glue or something.
I would. When you bound those, did they cut the edges off to make them like straight and even? Because I would worry about that with these modern books and how much they bleed.
Yeah, that's a choice that you have to go through, to do that, and I did do that for these. So I kind of did. I wanted it to be even. I didn't find that anything was cut off with this. So for me, for this book, actually, I didn't. That was obviously a concern about like, hey, am I gonna is it going to cut off any imagery or anything like that? But no, I think it had enough of a border, and I think I did that with all 5 volumes, and it did not. There's no issue there with any of that stuff. So
Excellent. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm interested in doing something like that myself. With there's a dinosaur book. I'm in my dinosaur phase, right? There's a dinosaur book called Age of Reptiles, which had an omnibus come out, but it doesn't have everything. There's like one series that comes after it, and one of the series in the omnibus has never been collected in any other format. The omnibus is really expensive, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll just get the individual issues and do exactly what you're doing. So, yeah, I'm thinking about doing that. I'm not usually.
It's been a few years with pricing. I mean, the add-ons really can add to it, but it's one of those things where if you already consider that you already have the issues as sunk cost, then getting the binding versus like a paying full price for an omnibus or something like that is definitely cheaper. You just got to wait a while. This isn't like an instant thing, right? It takes some. You send it away, and they're usually doing this when they can, and it takes months to get it back. But once you get it, it's yours, and it's pretty well set. The other thing with the contents, like we'll skip over a couple of things that I have in there, but like the Hood miniseries I had in here because, again, the thinking that if I was ever going to custom bind everything else, like there really wouldn't have been a home for that, so I kind of threw it in here to go along with the Osborn stuff in here and the kind of full on villain stuff. I guess technically speaking, if I ever custom bound New Avengers, it would kind of fit in there since he does a lot of battles with the New Avengers. And as well as with the Initiative. It's funny, the Avengers, the Initiative, I don't know if you read it back then, but during the Dark Reign era, in the second half of the Initiative, you get a lot of Tigra in that, and a lot of Tigra and the Hood stuff. So a lot more darker stuff. Not a lot of cat people things, but there are some cat people in it with Tigra and another character that I will not spoil.
Can never escape the cat people.
Cannot. But it's not the mythical cat people that in this time. It's a little bit different. But yeah, and I didn't put in all of the list issues. This was something that I kind of even was debating with Omar a little, or not Omar, with Curtis a little bit in his Discord. I have the X-Men one in here because the X-Men crossover's in here, and to me that makes perfect sense. But the Spider-Man one and the Wolverine one, and they all kind of feel like they belong more in their own series. Like I feel like they do more. It's more like Norman's team impacting those other heroes than it is so much as like character development for each of the Dark Avengers. So if you take like the Wolverine one, and there's technically two of them because I think there's a Dark Wolverine and a Wolverine one, but the Dark Wolverine one that kicks off the whole Frankencastle thing, if you remember that at all. You know what I'm talking about there?
The name sounds familiar, but this Dark Avengers is abutting to my kind of second dark period in comics. I was getting extreme event fatigue, and I was in grad school, so money was tight, and so I started dropping more and more titles. So the name sounds familiar, but I don't think I.
Yeah. So basically, it was a time when the Punisher became Frankenstein, and so that kind of kicks off that him as Frankenstein era. And the Spider-Man one's very much a Spider-Man story. The New Avengers one's, very much a Hawkeye New Avengers story. The Secret Invasion or the Secret Warriors one I have in that Secret Warriors omnibus there. So I think like because I bound these at the same time and I put the Secret Warriors in separately, that made me think, oh well, I'll put the other ones separate in their other spots. Otherwise, I would have put all those list issues in here. So. All right, well, I'm going to switch the cameras unless you think there's something else to show off there.
No, I think we're good. I like it. It's neat. I'm going to have to experiment with some of that myself. I'm not usually an advocate for binding your floppy comics because it does, of course, damage them. But, for some of these newer ones, there's so many out there that it doesn't hurt. Okay, fair warning. I am going to switch the screen back, and I just realized that the background introductory music I forgot to mute before changing over to this screen that we're on, so it's going to start again real quick, but I'll shut that off as soon as I can. All right, here we go. There we go. Yep, sorry. We know what we're doing here. All right. Stojr, have I got you there, or we just need to get...
audio. I'm just moving the camera around, so bear with me, but you can get started.
Gotcha, no worries. Okay, so, like I said, Stojr had a little bit of a different reading experience than us, and in some ways, I suggest that maybe he had a better one. But anyway, I'm going to read the back of this, because I didn't write up a synopsis here. Dark Avengers assemble. Norman Osborn, the former Green Goblin, has been awarded the Avengers franchise, and he's assembling a terrifying team in his own image, transforming well-known villains into twisted versions of Hawkeye, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Miss Marvel, and recruiting heavy hitters like Ares and the Sentry. Norman suits up as the armored Iron Patriot, but can the Dark Avengers prevail against Morgan Le Fay and the Beyonders? And the Beyonder? They fought the Beyonder? I do not remember that. And when Osborn targets mutant kind as a threat, who will join the Dark X-Men? as Marvel Boy discovers just how sinister a game he signed up for, and the Sentry's secrets are finally revealed, Osborn goes too far, and the siege of Asgard may put an end to all of his schemes. Yeah, this is very much in the period where Brian Michael Bendis was kind of directing the big events of the Marvel Universe, and it kind of felt like we went from one event to one event. This is a full-on continuation of the events of, Secret Invasion, right? And then it's capped on the other side by Siege, where, Norman Osborn's reign just kind of all falls apart.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You hear me okay still?
Yes, yep. We hear you. We got you.
All right. I wanted to switch over to the... So I use my phone for the camera most of the time because I feel like the phone does a little bit of a better, high-quality job for these things. And, so I had to move the phone from the mount where it was to here. So... But yeah, this is you're exactly right. I mean, this is kind of bookending the Secret Invasion versus the Secret Invasion and Siege bookends all of this stuff. So,
all right, so let's get into it. We're going to do things a little bit different with our summaries here because in the modern era, they began writing for the trade paperbacks, right? So really it takes 4 issues to 6 issues to actually get a storyline. So we're going to just sum things up for the storylines, and then we'll kind of give our impressions of individual issues. Although Stojr, I just realized... This always happens with these live reviews, right? I realized I made a mistake, and I didn't have intro slides for how I'm breaking up the storyline. So I'm just going to say that verbally here, and then we'll go into the next one. So, first storyline, Dark Avengers, number 1 through 4. And it doesn't have a title, because Bendis didn't give these titles. Alright, so in the wake of the Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn has essentially taken over the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. and are molding them into his vision. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been renamed Hammer for no explanation, and even Osborn / Brian Michael Bendis doesn't bother to come up with what the acronym stands for. I don't know if that ever shows up later, but at least in this volume, they never explain it, or if they did, I missed it. And Hammer is going to contain people from both S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Now, for the Avengers, Norman hires super criminals to act as stand-ins for the heroes who were the Avengers. So we get Bullseye as the new Hawkeye. Ares is going to be himself, but he's clearly a Thor stand-in. The Sentry is himself, but we know the Sentry also has this evil alter ego called the Void, so there's still a little bit of a supervillain in there. Moonstone will be the new Miss Marvel. Venom will be Spider-Man. Dakin Akihiro, I'm not sure, is that Dakin or Dakin? I was never clear on that. He's the son of Wolverine, and of course he's going to be the new Wolverine, because we're in the new Avengers era, where Wolverine was part of that team. And then Novar is Captain Marvel, and of course Osborn himself is going to be the Iron Patriot, or the new Iron Man. Now, their first mission is to save Dr. Doom, who has been attacked by the sorceress Morgan Le Fay, who used her magic and time travel to destroy Latveria. Now, as the Dark Avengers held off Morgana's demonic horde, Osborn and Doom travel back in time to face Morgana in the past, and they essentially banish her to the Cretaceous period. Alright, so with that, let's give our impressions of... Oh, hey, look, I should have had that up on the screen while explaining this. That's the cover of the volume. We do a good show.
So I'm going to kick this off with my first difference, because... I have an issue in here that starts off my volume that is not in yours.
Okay.
And that is the Secret Invasion, the Dark Reign one-shot. So this was a sort of like a kickoff book for the Dark Reign era. It was very much like the the dark version of the Cabal, of the Illuminati. Coming together again, which they called themselves the Cabal. So this is where you get Namor and Emma Frost and Loki and Doctor Doom, Norman Osborn, and the Hood acting as if they're the Illuminati. So do you remember the Illuminati?
I do. Yeah, I do remember the Illuminati.
Okay, so this is like that version of the Illuminati. So you get Norman pulling all these together, and you get the the real tension here between Norman and Doom, right? Because Doom is Doom and has all of the ego and is looking to understand what's going on here, but everything here is beneath him, right? And you know, he's here, and you get a lot of the Alex Maleev, really good art. You get Loki as female Loki, kind of showing off. You get this like bro version of Namor, which is kind of interesting, you know, of the way he's acting. And you sort of, it unveils Norman's like motivations here. It really kicks off, you know, how he's going to interact and try and pull things behind the scenes, and how he's going to try and act like the Illuminati here, and sort of run things from behind everything. So he makes his pitch to this table. Everybody kind of leaves. Doom and Namor are left behind. And then Namor kind of drops a little bit of the bro attitude slightly, and starts talking like, you know, normal, and almost like he was putting on this act to act a little dumber than he was, or, you know, act a little macho or he was. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that was the sense that I got. And, you know, he talked to Doom as these two kings of nations have talked to each other before. And he's like, basically, what do you think? And Doom is like, he's going to crash and burn. You know, let's just wait for it to happen. And when it happens, I get the lands and you get the seas. So, you know, Doom is kind of playing that off. This also acts as a bookend to like Norman's era on the Thunderbolts, or the whatever they were calling themselves at that time, the Dark Thunder. I think it was just the Thunderbolts. But a lot of this team is transferred over from the Thunderbolts comic, where he was, you know, in charge of this group of villains, so to speak. But he kills one of them in this issue that doesn't show up in Dark Avengers, showing that he's not really in control anymore. The other thing that kind of ties this to other things is, like, you know, you're left with these sort of questions about Emma Frost, right? Which we'll touch on in the Dark Avengers X-Men crossover. But this is sort of laying this groundwork of like, is Emma going to go back to being a villain? Is she, you know, is there some sort of betrayal happening here? There'll be a book called Dark Avengers or Dark X-Men: The Confession. So, you know, they're laying a lot of groundwork to kind of lay that out there. And Emma's having some nightmares. And in her nightmares, she's hearing Kitty Pryde call to her, and sort of ask her, you know, just desperately kind of calling out to her. Now, setting the stage, do you know why Kitty would be not around and calling to Emma at this point in time?
I would assume because she's dead, but I do not know.
So she's not technically dead. So she's stuck in a giant space bullet. So in Astonishing X-Men, that Joss Whedon,
Right.
John Cassidy book that we've gotten some epic collections about already. One of the things that happens is that alien race basically shoots a giant bullet at the Earth. You know, they think it's a rocket or a bomb, and it turns out it's just a big hunk of metal. They're like literally just shooting a big bullet at the Earth. And what happens is Kitty is able to phase that, but because it's so big and she phases it through the entire Earth, she gets stuck in it and she can't get out of it. So the bullet keeps going because it phases through the Earth, and she's not able to, you know, get herself back. So she's like stuck, lost in space, traveling with this sort of space bullet right now. And that's why she's calling out to Emma Frost. And I'll talk a little bit more about why Emma Frost and you know, what her status quo is, because I know you have some questions when we get to the other stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the Cabal issue and kind of where it's in. But you had asked about the summary of the first four issues. So diving into those first four issues, I really like the art in all of this. I like the team that they pulled together here. I think that this is a really interesting team. I never knew anything about Ares before this.
I feel like he just kind of came onto the scene when all this was happening.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, like, he is a character.
Did you look that up?
No, I didn't. I mean, I know he's a character that had shown up in Thor before, but like I remember that they were kind of building him up as a character before this, that he was doing a lot more things, but I don't remember exactly what. It's been 20 years, you know? Maybe not quite 20, but close.
And they his character's like kind of touched upon in the Secret Warriors, because the Secret Warriors is kind of like New Warriors. It's like Nick Fury's New Warriors, is the kind of idea here. And there's not a ton of backstory you need for them because everything's in that volume in their 20 or 30 issues that they have, with the exception of having their sort of debut in Secret Invasion. So if I have one qualm with the binding that I did for that Secret Warriors, which I think is my favorite of the bindings I did not include the Secret Invasion issue where they get revealed. So there's it's like issue 4 or something like that. They just kind of spring onto the scene, and then they get their own book. So that's kind of where they come from. So if you're kind of feeling like, hey, I don't know who these characters are when we get to that issue later in this book, nobody else did either, other than if you follow their own series, right? They were brand new characters. But one of them is his son, and so there's
Ares'
a little bit
son.
of a connection. Ares' son.
Yeah.
So there's a connection between those books.
Okay, so I broke down things of my thoughts for each individual issue here, and I'm going to start off with I forgot how much context is needed for these books at this time. In essence, we're coming off of a very big event, and this is kind of like an event book itself in a way. While we have the introduction that explains the Secret Wars and why Norman Osborn is now in this position where he's leading the Avengers, there's just a bunch of little things going on in this book that are not explained to the reader, and you're just kind of expected to know. I jot down a couple of things. Firstly, who is the Sentry, and why is he willing to work with Osborn in exchange for his help? I know a little bit about the Sentry because I read it at the time, but if you have no knowledge of the Avengers, this is going to be weird. You're not going to know about the supervillain called the Void that lives inside of the Sentry, so that's going to be weird. The Venom symbiote is attached to Mac Gargan, better known as the Scorpion. All right, so that was happening at this point. Pretty much anything to do with the Thunderbolts and who they are, but Stojr, as you say, that this is kind of a continuation of the Thunderbolts book. So if you're reading the Thunderbolts, then it makes sense, but I've never read the Thunderbolts, so that it confuses me. What the heck is Morgan Le Fay doing here? And to that point, who is she as a Marvel character? I'm familiar with Morgan Le Fay from Arthurian legend, but I have no idea how she fits into the Marvel universe. And I know Bendis has a reputation for being wordy. I forgot just how much he would intentionally let the art speak for him. And sometimes this works really well. Other times I feel like it's rather awkward. In particular, when we just have a silent panel that shows anyone with a shocked expression on their face, it feels weird to me in comics that have no writing. Bullseye in particular at the start of the first issue when everyone's in the diner and they learn that Daken is Wolverine's son. It kind of reminded me of that controversy over Greg Land in the O-Face, if you're familiar with that. So I just saw that and I thought, God, it's just awkward and weird. That's not meant to be a criticism of Deodato Jr.'s art. I think shocked facial expressions are just kind of difficult in general. So relying solely on the art, I don't think pays off very well in comments. Particularly any slack-jawed expressions. I just don't think that works well. Having said all that, I like the concept of the Dark Avengers, and it did happen organically at the time. It just feels awkward reading the book out of nowhere. And while we've had teams of supervillains before, and even some masquerading as heroes, I think this is the first time I can think of the villains trying to take on the persona of the heroes as a group, like a very ramped up Kraven's Last Hunt, you know? So I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, there's obviously the original Thunderbolts, where they're masquerading as heroes, but they're sort of masquerading as new heroes, right?
Right.
They're not stealing other heroes' identities, and I think that's a key difference here. I guess I would say though, for readers that are coming into this cold, and as somebody who experienced it at the time, there. Some of that is some of that criticism of just like being confused or having to follow up on things is just comic books 101 in the sense that like you're supposed to be confused, and the idea is that you spider web out and kind of learn more about things, and you don't have to know more. Like I don't know anything about Morgan Le Fay's like presence in the Marvel universe, but through this book I picked up that she's basically Doctor Doom's booty call, and he pissed her off at some point in time,
See, I
right?
never
I
picked
mean,
up that she was a booty call.
oh yeah, I mean, there was there's like to me, I always that's the way I read this, that there is like, sexual tension, that like he wronged her in some way, and and that didn't happen. And maybe I'm remembering some book that I don't remember the issue of, but subconsciously I got that from somewhere else. The Dakin Dark Wolverine Sun thing, I wasn't reading those issues at the time, so I just knew that he existed. That's about it.
Yeah.
But he was thrown into the mix here. I don't think he was part of Thunderbolts or anything like that. So he's a new character that was just kind of pulled in and thrown in here. Didn't know anything about Miss Marvel, or Moonstone, other than she was in Thunderbolts. So she's been a mainstay through the original Thunderbolts till now. And the Sentry was a little odd. I guess I knew about him from the new Avengers issues. I think, but like his miniseries and stuff was kind of confusing at the time. It was meant to kind of insert him into the Marvel continuity. So, like how he's operating and like why he's acting this way, or especially why he's cooperating with Norman. Like that is wholly a mystery for this book that they do answer at the end of the book,
Right.
right?
That's
So
fair.
so you're not supposed to know that part.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that is just like Bendis likes to put little mysteries out there and then solve them. And I think one of the frustrations and I like Bendis's writing a lot. I followed all of this stuff back then, but my one frustration is that there's sometimes he'll lay all that groundwork out and then it doesn't pay off, or he doesn't. He runs out of time or whatever. So it's like, all right, you put this mystery box out there, but we never solved it, right? It's like you know, it's like you get burned after watching Lost, right? Like you don't want to open up another mystery box show and then have it get canceled, or kind of go off into a weird tangent or something like that.
I think maybe my frustration here is there was a time in comics where the ethos was every issue could be somebody's first issue, so you do kind of need to set things up. And while that can feel very repetitive for a long-term reader, it is good to just, if you are just jumping in. And I think we're at a point at this time where that ethos was out the window. I don't know if they had started the recap pages at the beginnings of comics at this time. Maybe that is, and that was meant to fill it in, but we don't have those in the Epic collection. Yeah, you've got your collection. Are those existing in there?
Yeah, so they do have recap pages in there. So like here's a recap page for
Okay.
whatever issue, it's issue 1 through 4, because that's Morgan there. So, but it doesn't really explain things that you're talking about. Like it's not going to explain something that happened in another book or somewhere else completely. It's recapping the previous 2 or 3 issues. So that one was issue 4. But it's not like if I went to the recap page for issue 1, it's going to explain who Morgan Le Fay is.
Right.
Whereas like in the late 90s, they tried to do those like guide to the Marvel Universe recap pages with like
Yeah.
the fold out. You remember those? It
Yep.
was like after the Clone Saga era, and those were very much more like we're gonna give you like a primer for these characters, even if like it has nothing to do with the last couple of issues. I always liked that. I wish that lasted, but I think at the time, knowing that they were folding all those books, that it wasn't going to last long.
Yeah, gosh, you're right. That's probably quite expensive. All right, let's move on to issue 2 here. Your thoughts on issue 2?
So the yeah, sorry, I was getting my notes lined up here.
Sorry.
With what we got talking about here.
I threw that on you.
Yeah, so well, because I wasn't sure if we were talking about it as a block, and if I rambled on too long for the first 4 issues, and we were moving on to the next block, or if we were moving on to the next issue. So that's what threw me off there. But yeah. So so issue 2, I think like her trying to go back in time and kill Doom as a child, like that's some vindictive stuff there. I thought that was pretty interesting. You get this sort of big hammer reveal with the way that they're acting as this like Gestapo here. And Norman's going out to help Doom because like he's trying to get Doom sucked in. Like there's a lot, and it's one of the reasons I'm a little upset that some of the Cabal issues are not in the Epic collection, but I'm happy I have them. Is because a lot of the motivations behind the scenes here is because he's trying to win Doom over. Like he's not trying to be subservient to Doom, and we'll see that later. But he wants Doom on his side, right? He knows that he needs this like alliance of other villains. So he's going out there to help him out with that. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody's head was ripped off in one of these Bendis books or in this series, I'd have 2 nickels. But it's not a lot, but it's just a little odd that it happened twice.
Yeah, I was thinking it's clearly we don't have the Comics Code Authority anymore, right? I was a little shocked to see that the Sentry just rips Morgan Le Fay's head off. But yeah, did you have more?
No, I'm good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I cut you off there. But yeah, my thoughts on this one were just that same thing with the head thing. Also, it's been a while since I've read a Bendis comic, and I forgot about all the side comments that he has his characters do, which I find funny, but they're sometimes distracting. They're having these little side conversations and little quips, which are funny, but it doesn't really add much to it, other than I guess a little bit of characterization. But even then, that I feel like that's more Bendis than the actual characters.
Right. I think it's that like almost like that movie, like how people have complaints about the Marvel movies that they all have like this like snarky comedy element to it, and they're like, hey, I like that, but like, does every movie have to be like that? And I think that's a similar criticism of Bendis with that. I remember when he started writing Mighty Avengers and he tried to reintroduce thought bubbles, and it just became almost like too much because now people are having those snarky comments with themselves, as well as trying to do those things. So that didn't really last long. We never got thought bubbles coming back.
God, yeah, I forgot about thought bubbles. I don't remember when exactly those went away. I don't know how I feel about that, whether I like that they're gone or not.
They kind of got replaced by narration panes.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, they I don't know when when the Marvel made the decision to just like get rid of them, but Bendis very clearly in the first like 6 or 12 issues of Mighty Avengers, which is right before Secret Invasion, is when that took place. He tried to reintroduce those, and it was odd. Like for something that was around for comics for so long, it was odd to see them back and like interact with them again. But it didn't really work, I think.
All right, let's go to issue 3 then. Stojr, thoughts on issue 3?
I think that Bob being unhinged is just the big mystery to this book, right?
Bob being the Sentry,
and Doom being, yep. Bob the Sentry, the fact that Doom's put in a position where he almost like has to trust Norman and helped out with this is an interesting win for him as we go forward here. But there's just a lot of like talk in this, right? There's a lot of like these scenes are going to be revisited as you sort of look at this like background of Norman and the Sentry kind of talking in that bedroom scene. You get some great art in here with that double page spread of the Dark Avengers fighting Morgan. But yeah, otherwise it's just kind of moving the plot forward. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm glad we got this introductory scene where Osborn is manipulating the Sentry to bring him over to his side. It does make sense having this connection between them that, Osborn is supposedly keeping the Green Goblin in check, and so he advises the Sentry on how to do the same with the Void and keep the Void in check. But of course, what's great is he's doing what he shouldn't be doing, right? He's trying to get the Sentry to suppress the Void instead of actually dealing with it. And Osborn does the same with himself and the Green Goblin, which of course is why Osborn keeps lapsing into the Goblin and his own insanity. I think, the point is the Osborn really is the crazy one. He really is the evil one. The Green Goblin is just what lets him finally live everything out. I think the battle with Morgan Le Fay in this issue continues to be interesting, and I like a good time travel story. So I'm looking forward to where that ends up going. I just wish I knew why Morgan Le Fay hates Doom so much, which you said booty call, some kind of unrequited love or something there, but I missed that in this if it was in there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into the subtext here, but or some things that she said, but that's the way I took it. Is that they're just they broke up or something like that, for lack of a better term.
And maybe I'm not reading enough into the subtext. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to issue number 4. Thoughts on this one to wrap up this first story arc?
I mean, I thought it was a satisfying conclusion. I thought the time travel of like leaving her back in that time period was kind of funny. Everybody getting unfrozen and sort of Ares, humorously trying to battle the air after he gets unfrozen is kind of good. You know, there's a weird ad in the middle of this book for this Kroll Mandoon on Comedy Central. I don't know if you remember that show.
I do. Actually, I watched that show.
I never watched it, but I remember the ads. And we talked a lot about Conan recently, so I figured I'd mention that. But yeah, I was satisfied with this. I thought that there were some cool scenes in this. Ultimately, it's a decent first arc that gets Doom a little bit indebted to them, and puts them on this like adventure and against a pretty overpowered villain, at least for their standards. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought there was some gorgeous artwork here. I really like the sequence of Doom rebuilding his castle and Latveria using his time cube. I thought that was really interesting. I don't really have much more to say than that, although if you want, do you want a little hint of what was going on with Crod Mandoon?
Yeah, go for it.
So that Crod Mandoon and the Flaming Sword of Fire, right? It was meant to be a parody of the Sword of Truth television show. The Sword of Truth television show is based off of a book series by Terry Goodkind, which the first book in that I thought was quite excellent, and then I read the others, and read the first one. That's the one that's worth it. But I was excited by that TV show because I did kind of like the book series, but the TV show Sword of Truth was meant to be like kind of a new version of Hercules, and it just kind of fell flat. But Crod Mandoon I thought was funny, but I haven't watched that, and I guess since it came out, that was the last time I watched it. All right. I've got a no prize for this one, Stojr.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so in the Mighty Marvel tradition, we're going to give out some no prize awards, which gives us a chance to highlight some of the fun and weird things found within a volume, or highlight just what a volume does best. So, without further ado, the Consistently Inconsistent Award is going to Bendis' perception of time. In just 2 panels, we get chronological inaccuracies. The first one, which you see on the left there, Morgan Le Fay is being sent to the Cretaceous period, where we see a dinosaur eating human beings. But humanity had not evolved yet. The closest we could even say is Homo habilis, which was about 85 million years ago, but not the 100 million years ago we're told on the page. All right, and then in the very next panel, we're told that Doom is in the year 690 AD, because that's where Morgan Le Fay was, and that he's during the age of Arthur Pendragon. Now, I'm willing to accept that Morgan Le Fay was alive in 690 because she's a magician and she can do what she wants. But if there wasn't an historical King Arthur, then he was kicking about in the 400s or 500s AD, not in the late 7th century. Right? Our records are good enough to know what was happening in the late 7th century, and we know there's not a King Arthur there. And just so I'm being fair, I suppose I should award myself the same award of consistently inconsistent, because depicting dinosaurs and humans at the same time doesn't really bother me, but getting that tiny thing like the date of King Arthur wrong, that does bug me. So, there we go. I have my own problems. Alright, Stojr, should we go to the next phase here? Uh-oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh. I think Stojr froze on us. Oh man, my thing. It always happens. Always happens.
Did we lose you?
This line.
Oh, you froze, man.
Oh no, here we go. I think it was Discord this time.
There we go.
Are you back now?
I From my perspective, I never left. But did you? Are you back? Are
Yeah,
you good?
I'm blaming that on Discord because I'm checking my thing that tells me frames drops, and we did not have any. Oh no, never mind. We had 468 drop. I don't know what just happened. Gosh, bless America. Um, always
It
happens.
didn't like your Obama meme. It just it like that's when it kind of went wacky for a few seconds. But it looks like it's back, so that's
Okay,
good.
all right. The internet censored my Obama meme. Okay. Um. All right. Well, it always happens with these live ones. Maybe we need to stop live streaming. Maybe we just need to be a recording only.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The technology's there. It can be taught. Um, so, but yeah, the I will just say the panel with the dinosaur. They say that it's 1 million BC.
Right.
Did yours say 100 million, or did you just
Um.
say that?
Oh, you know what? Are
I don't
you?
know if it makes a difference. I'm not doing the dinosaur math, but I'm just saying.
Well, 1 million BC. We don't have dinosaur. Well, no, I guess we do have dinosaurs. It's 66 million years ago is when they end up dying. Here, let me find it again. There's no page numbers in these. Yeah, you're right. 1 million
No.
BC. Okay, I'll need to. I'll once again consistently inconsistent. I goofed that
We'll have
up.
a dinosaur footnote on that, and we'll come back to you.
Well, no, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, 66 million years ago is when the dinosaurs were wiped out. I literally just read this in a book. So 1 million BC, the dinosaurs would have been gone, long gone then. So there shouldn't be
There
any
you go.
dinosaurs at all. So there we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm not reading it right now, but I just happen to have it right here. The last days of the dinosaurs. And even on the back page, 66 million years ago, that's when the asteroid hit. So,
Yeah.
all right, redeemed. Okay. Let's see. Let's do the next story arc. This is Dark Avengers number 5 through 6. Norman has to work on his image by appearing on television to address accusations from Hawkeye that the Avengers are just a bunch of villains. But he also has to work on the Sentry to ensure that the Void doesn't take over. However, when an Atlantean terrorist cell attacks the West Coast and Namor refuses to do anything about it, Norman manipulates the Sentry to have the Void kill all the Atlanteans involved. All right, Soldier, let's just do number 5 here. What are your thoughts on number 5?
So the way that they're writing this book is interesting when you get the whole package, but at the time, it's really confusing, right? So like, how did the Sentry survive at the end of the last issue? What's going on at this standoff outside of the tower that at least kicks off the recap page, and was the last page of the last issue. But they don't. But they just kind of have this conversation up there. I think there's like more to it. Like it feels like there's more to it, and I think as we get to the later half of the book, we'll see that there's more to it. This is also a time where like it feels like you kind of need to read a second book because like if you don't know why Hawkeye's in a Ronin costume and what's going on there and all of that stuff, definitely something that would be very confusing. Um, I like the way that Norman's manipulating the media here. I mean, that would never happen in real life. So it was very comic booky, um, as well as just some of the way that we're set up with like these characters acting like adults, right? We get Ares that is dealing with some parental problems right now. We get Moonstone, who's exercising her sexuality. We get Bullseye, creeping up on all that. Some real interesting stuff, and then we get these like the Atlanteans attacking and stuff like that. So I think this is like ramping up the mystery and the intrigue. I also like the fact that which this will get played out a little bit more detail when we get to the annual, but just like how Marvel Boy is just like completely out of the loop and he just realizes like, oh wait, I just signed up with the wrong team. On his last page or on the last page of this issue. So. What did you
Yeah.
think?
Um, I agree. The interview with Norman, I thought that was really interesting, and Bendis spun the whole situation exactly as a politician would, right? And of course, the obvious counter argument that Hawkeye's accusation of the Avengers being a bunch of villains. The obvious counter argument is that Hawkeye was once a villain himself before coming an Avenger. So of course, that was what was brought in, but that's exactly what should have been brought in. So I thought that was good. I did find during all this the direction of reading was hard to make out at times. This is a problem of having a double page spread without clearly having panels cross the gutter, so it looks like two separate pages, and thus the reader, or at least I, am going to read it like two separate pages, and that messes up the story, or it makes it difficult for the reader to follow along. So I could do without that. But that seemed to only be a problem during the interview scenes. I haven't really had that problem elsewhere in this issue. Otherwise, I thought the having Bullseye bullying Marvel Boy does speak to Bullseye's incredible immaturity. Right, this is exactly the type of thing that I see middle school boys do on a regular basis. Like I read that and I was having some PTSD to work. It's like, oh God, that's the kind of crap I have to deal with on a daily basis. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it speaks to Bullseye's character in that instance, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like Dodota, like his mindset here is like if I have 2 pages to work with, then I'm gonna spread it off across the 2 pages. So then when he doesn't do that, is when it throws things off, or where it's like in between. So definitely agree with like the interview scene, right? And I was flipping through the book, but he's taking a lot of opportunities wherever he can, whether it's Ares yelling at the group or just Ares entering his room to kind of look through, and find the note that his kid's not going to school, or the bedroom scene that closes out the issue, right? You in theory could read that as one page because there's only these two square panels on and a splash page on the left, and on the right it's a bunch of smaller panels, but it is meant to be read as a 2 page spread. But there's other pages that in this book that are not meant to be read there. So it's almost like he's experimenting with the fact that like I'm going to play with the fact that if I have 2 pages next to each other, 70% of the time I'm going to make it a 2 page spread, but when he doesn't, it throws you off.
Yeah, and I'm fine with them being 2 page spreads. You just got to make that clear to the reader because we've been conditioned for decades to read 1 page at a time, right? So, all right, let's go to number 6. Oh, do I have number 6 up there? Yes, I do. Okay, Stojr, thoughts on this one?
So I liked how we had not Osborn continuously like in control of the situation and out of control. So he's able to control the Century Void, but he's now misplaced Ares and Marvel Boy, and it really, and he just full on murders these Atlantean terrorists or Atlanteans. So you see like the cracks starting to form. You see him like able to sort of orchestrate some things very well, but he's got too many plates spinning and he's not able to kind of keep that going. So it feels like a deep breath between the opening arc and the next sort of X-Men crossover too, right? So it feels like we're about to ramp up for something else. And the fact that Namor is with the X-Men plays into why we also get that crossover with the X-Men. So playing into like the bigger picture here, I think that the fact that either Namor is about to full on be joining the X-Men as part of this crossover or has already joined them, is something that's kind of known at this point in time. They're playing up that he's a mutant in the greater Marvel stuff. So again, I think this is like one of those areas that hits a little bit different if you're following along with everything else. I don't think it hits bad without that. It's just Norman kind of pissed off at and gonna sort of poke at Namor. But yeah, we also get a little bit of like I almost want to go back and read some of the Iron Man books because that's another book where Norman taking over Shield. You get him with the all the different armor here. That's something that plays out a little bit in is it Matt? I forget if it's Matt Fraction. Yeah, it's Matt Fraction's Iron Man run. So it's right here behind me. So this is where Tony Stark disassembled and stuff like that. It's basically him on the run from Norman during that whole run. And the fact that he's able to break in here and get those all of those old costumes mirrors a little bit what Tony's doing on that run, because one of the things that you see him doing on that run is progressively getting Iron Man costumes that were simpler and simpler until the end of the run, where he's like in his original armor for an issue. And the fact that you have Norman here with all of the parts is just an interesting like Easter egg almost, or a little bit of a difference between what's going on in Iron Man and what's going on here. So.
Yeah, I guess that then fits into maybe my big complaint of this book overall is you need so much context. This is a bigger, wider breathing world than earlier times in the Marvel Universe, where you were a little more sectioned off. Everything is kind of working together at this time, which on the one hand is really cool, but on the other hand can be overwhelming, right?
And I think the downside too is like, I guess the only thing I would say is like, I think all the books were like that.
Yeah.
Like, see, if you're reading New Avengers and Epic collections, it's tying into all this stuff. It's tying into Mighty Avengers. So, I guess like there's a part of me that's almost like, well, but part of this book was almost its own little corner, because you could have these character pieces with the Dark Avengers. You could have sort of the Norman and Sentry stuff, and if you just focused on that, you didn't need to worry about everything else that was going on. But yeah, I mean, every other book was sort of like stitched together because 70% of them were being written by Bendis, or interacted with him somehow.
Right.
I mean, even that Secret Warriors book, this is not the official first Hickman book, but this is because Hickman did like that Shield book, which was like the Shield in like Leonardo Da Vinci's time, yeah. So there's this like weird book that has like Shield as like an ancient organization. Leonardo da Vinci's in it. That's, I think, like Hickman's official first like Marvel work.
Didn't he do the Ultimates, or was that someone else?
He did, but I think that was like at the same time or
Okay.
right after the Shield stuff. Like the Shield stuff's weird because it came out. There was like big gaps in when it came out. Like so, like the first part of it came out, and then like it was like a couple years before the rest of it came out. But when you think about like Hickman reading order, like you get the Shield stuff, you get that Ultimates part, and then you get this, which is Secret Warriors. But Bendis kicked this off with him, so Bendis has the writing credits for like the first couple issues, and then Bendis kind of disappears into the background of that. So yeah, a lot of this is like Hickman's beginning into the Marvel universe too.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and move on. My only thought on this one is I thought Norman manipulating the Sentry to bring out the Void I thought was quite fascinating, and it makes perfect sense that Norman is trying to create the same dichotomy in the Sentry that exists within himself and the Green Goblin. The difference, of course, is Norman is evil and manipulative even without the Goblin. The Goblin just ramps things up. Bob, the Sentry, is not inherently, right? Okay.
Well, current Spider-Man writing might disagree with you.
Current Spider-Man writing? What's happening in Spider-Man with the Sentry? Wait, maybe...
No, Spider-Man with Norman.
Yeah, okay. That's a whole different mess. You've got 15 years between when this was written and the current stuff where Norman's sins have been taken away by the Sin Eater. I don't think Bendis envisioned that as a possibility.
No, not at all. But I guess my point being is that like the concept of Norman being evil without the Goblin persona is kind of the opposite of what they're doing right now. I'm not disagreeing with you that it shouldn't be the way you just worded it, and at this reading time. But because they took away the sins, like Norman's technically a good guy now.
Oh yeah, he's going to be the Green Goblin in issue 1000. You know he's coming back. You know it's going to be crazy.
He's already. I don't know. They need to make him. I think we need a break from Norman for a while. To be honest, but he's we've had enough covers with the Green Goblin coming back in the last Spider-Man run. It'd be good to focus on some other good ones. But
Yeah,
anyway,
no,
I
no.
digress.
All right, let's move on to the crossover. This is the Dark Avengers X-Men Utopia, and I'll just do a summary of the whole crossover here. First, I think I may have neglected to give the credits for the earlier books there, but this crossover was written by Matt Fraction with pencils by Terry Dodson, Luke Ross, and Mike Deodato Jr., with inks by Rachel Dodson, Mike Deodato Jr., Rick Magyar, Mark Pennington, and Luke Ross. But I'll add that the art credits for the book, the first book, are a complete mess, with Mark Silverstone. Gosh, Silverstone. You can tell my autocorrect fixed my notes.
Silvestri.
Mark Silvestri, yes, thank you. Silvestri is created as the primary penciler, but is then assisted by 4 other pencilers and 9 different inkers, so I'm not going to bother going through all of that. You can find it in the book. Anyway, an anti-mutant protest springs up called Humanity Now. It is led by Simon Trask, brother of Bolivar Trask, the inventor of the Sentinels. While clearly a bigoted hate group, they held a peaceful march through California to support a bill that would limit mutants' reproductive rights. Well, a group of young mutants attempted to counter protests, which turned violent, and riots erupted on the West Coast. And this prompts Norman Osborn and the Dark Avengers to get involved to quell the violence. However, Norman's solution was to imprison the mutants, use a machine to siphon their powers to make them docile, and to empower one of his own agents, which made up a team of new Dark X-Men. Well, Cyclops and the X-Men thus hatched a plan to stop Norman, and they did this by raising, I assume that was Asteroid M. I'm not sure that was actually explained. A big rock out of the ground, which I think was Asteroid M, and this became a safe haven for all mutants. And then when Norman Osborn attempted to invade the asteroid, the X-Men fought them off on live television, and both sides claimed a victory. Now, for the X-Men, a new mutant nation called Utopia was created. For Osborn, Utopia is viewed as a floating prison for mutant kind. All right, so let's just start with the first issue of Dark Avengers X-Men Utopia. Stojr, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I think Mark Silvestri's art is something I wish I liked more. Like, I kind of like it in spurts. My challenges with him in Uncanny X-Men in the like mid 200s or the early 200s, which we'll get to in Epic Collections in a month or two, has always been like it's too light. And I'm hoping that the Epic Collections make them a little brighter because, obviously I've only read them in, the issues, and those issues fade over time and stuff like that. So, and I didn't hate his art in the last story arc of New X-Men that he pencils. He pencils this like futuristic story arc there. But I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of his art. It doesn't grab me as much as I wish it did because it feels like it should. I think this issue does a good job providing players in scope of the X-Men and where they're at with their current status quo. It's a lot of juggling. You basically have to understand the X-Men are on the West Coast now. They're in this place called Utopia. They have some agreements with, I guess it's San Francisco, if I remember correctly. I'm a little spotty on this era because it's an era that I haven't like fully collected. I kind of stopped buying the single issues of X-Men around this time. I might have backfilled that in through some of my dollar bin searches since then, but I haven't gone back and read them all. And I've only recently started getting a little bit of the thick trades that cover that era, but I don't think I have them all covered. So, I know about the Kitty stuff. I know how Kitty Pryde comes back, but exactly what's going on in X-Men around this era is a little bit of a gap for me. I didn't get all of those Matt Fraction books. The plot with the protest here and the Dark Avengers hunting Scott down feels a little bit like too much like real life in 2026, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So that's some interesting stuff here. What did you think? Because I think you had some thoughts, and I think you had some questions that I might be able to fill in on.
Sure. Yeah. I like where this event is starting off and where it's going. It feels like this is going to be a big, meaningful event like we were kind of getting in the 2000s. And if I do remember correctly, the X-Men do end up on that island / asteroid for a while. But like I said, we're butting up on my second kind of comics dark age.
Yeah, so they're already there. Like, so that's where I'm a little confused. That like, so they live on that island.
Yeah, but this is where they raised the island. That happened during this mini series or this crossover event. They might
I
have
think
already
they
been on the
raised
West
something
Coast.
else.
Say it again.
Aren't they? So are they just in San Francisco right now? Is that the idea?
I think so. I think that's what I got out of this.
Okay. All right, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all
'Cause
good.
I don't know. I'm confused, but you're probably right. But go ahead.
There's a problem when everything connects together, right? It starts to get kind of confusing. I liked that the Humanity Now crowd was being presented with a reasonable position at first. Clearly it's not reasonable to try to control someone's right to have a child, but a reasoning is given behind it. You know, it's the classic thing of no villain ever thinks he is the villain, right? Everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. So we get the thinking behind the Humanity Now people. And then to have the riot start because one of the mutants attacked first does paint just how morally gray some of this stuff can be, right? The mutants are not in the wrong, right? They're the ones who are being attacked here. But do they have the right to resort to violence? Do they have any other choice, right? I think that I think that is what makes for interesting drama in this case. And of course, to have the young and inexperienced mutants being the ones who are the first to resort to violence, of course, makes perfect sense. You know, it's the younger ones who have the greater energy and desire to lash out versus our more experienced, calmer mutants. And you know, that's the generation gap that's been happening for decades, right? And then Osborn is manipulating all of this to his advantage, which of course is intriguing. And I think here's where you need to help me, Stojr. I want to know how he has ties to Emma Frost. I don't know what the Cabal is because it's not in this book. I've pieced together since then, as you said earlier, that it is like the Illuminati, but for the villains. And I think we maybe not ever explained what the Illuminati is. The Illuminati was like a think tank of the smartest and most influential heroes in the universe to try to kind of control things and whatever. You know, you got Reed Richards, you got Black Bolt, Doctor Strange. I don't remember who else is in there. Professor X was in there, right?
Yeah, with the Illuminati, there's not a huge book. It was like a 6-issue or 4-issue series. But they show how they touch on different parts in Marvel history and how their actions kind of lead to Secret Invasion. So, you know, you get them interacting with the Beyonder in one of the issues. You get them interacting with the Skrulls, which ultimately leads to Secret Invasion years later. You get them responsible for sending the Hulk to Planet Hulk.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's the other bad thing that they did. So although it's like this sort of gathering and think tank, it's like it's almost showing that, like, you know, you get these people trying to pull behind the scenes, and even though they're your heroes, you know, Reed Richards, Iron Man, Black Bolt, and Namor. Black Panther turns them down. Captain America is supposed to be in like a later version of it during Hickman's run, but even he is only there for like 5 minutes, and he leaves because of what they're trying to do there.
Yeah.
So it's and Professor X, that's who we're missing. So they're all part of that Illuminati. There's the issue that's not in the collected edition that you have, which is the Cabal. So, you know, there's only one issue that you're missing. It's not like there's a whole bunch of things happening other than maybe like a panel here and there where you might see people interact or they reference one of those things. But Emma's part of, you know, she's basically taking on that Professor X role in the evil version, in the Cabal version, which plays a lot into what's going on here.
Yeah. And I think added to this, and this is maybe more of a personal problem, I've never quite figured out how this relationship between Emma Frost and Cyclops happened. Again, I think this happened in a period X-Men got so convoluted and so complex that I have dropped it many times, even though I like the X-Men. And
Yeah.
my reference point is, Emma Frost, what we've been reading in the Claremont run, right? She's a villain. She works with the Hellfire Club. So I'm not sure how that transition happened to her not only becoming a superhero, which, I can accept that. We've seen that many a times of villains becoming heroes. But then she enters into a relationship with Cyclops. That baffles me, and
Yep.
it still does. And I know it's been that way for a long time, but...
I'm all set to give you the Cliff Notes version of that.
Okay, good.
So I was actually hitting it more from the relationship side, but you touched on the need to understand Emma's redemption a little bit there. So let me start off with that, right? So right around the blue and gold era of the X-Men. So
Okay.
about 280 of Uncanny, right around X-Men #1. You have the death of Emma's team, who we'll see more in new
Oh, shoot, that's right. I forgot. She was leading
in New
Generation
Mutants,
X, wasn't she?
right? So
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now where we're at reading the Uncanny, we're getting the beginnings of Emma getting her own school, right?
Right.
The issue that we read last week has Doug and Kitty trying to go infiltrate that school. But if we read the New Mutants alongside that I've only skimmed, we're going to start to see the beginning of her having her own version of like the New Mutants. Okay, so that really is the beginning of her redemption, right? In the sense that, like, yes, they're the villains for the New Mutants, but she's training students. She's got a school. Like, she's not like trying to take over the world per se. I haven't read all that New Mutant stuff, so I don't know all the evil things that she does. But right around issue 280 of Uncanny, all of them just die. They all get murdered. And that puts her, like, she goes, like, she just blinks out. Like, that's just too much for her.
Is this the Mutant Massacre?
No, this is
No.
not the Mutant Massacre. So Mutant Massacre is coming up sooner.
Right.
That's more about the Morlocks.
That's Morlocks, right? Okay.
This is like Sentinels and, like, I forget who does it. Like, but this is right around the time that Bishop is introduced, right?
Right.
So it's like
Yep.
plus or it's either the same issues or like they're 5 issues apart or something like that, right? Right around that time.
Yeah.
So she blinks out. So she's at the X Mansion and she's basically catatonic. And there's some storylines where she interacts with Iceman and kind of takes over his body, and she's basically introduced, like, had this trauma, and she's like similar to what we saw with the last volume that we read, where she's just kind of catatonic because she got attacked by something. That's happening at the X Mansion about 100 issues later. Okay. She eventually wakes up fully during the Phalanx crossover, where she teams up with Banshee to rescue the Generation X kids, because that's all the kickoff of the Generation X. Then she and Banshee go open up the school as an offshoot of Xavier's Institute, and she's a good guy going through all of Generation X. She's like the co-headmaster of that school. So you get 85 issues of her being a good guy, and then rejoining the X-Men later. So that's the Emma redemption arc.
And I had forgotten that. I was reading when all that came out, but I just plain forgot. But relationship, tell me about that.
So the relationship side, so you get you want to start off with like new X-Men, but then understand the context of new X-Men. So put yourself like who wrote Grant Morrison's new X-Men. So in Grant Morrison's new X-Men, Cyclops' headspace is all over the place because we had just finished some story arcs not too far soon where he like merged with Apocalypse. There was this Apocalypse, the 12 storyline, and he's just like, his head's all messed up, right? Just know that, he's been through some stuff recently. And during Grant Morrison's new X-Men, him and Emma have this like psychic affair. So he's never like sleeping with her. He's never cheating on Jean, but he's having like this sort of like weird relationship with Emma over like in his mind, and hiding that from Jean. And he gets caught, and there's all these things going on. So that's like the seed of them having a relationship. At the end of the new X-Men, spoilers, Jean dies, although Jean dies all the time. So I don't know how that's much of a spoiler, right? But the Magneto Zorn, whatever the hell that thing was, kills Jean. Wolverine finishes her off, or whatever happens there. And but Jean is merged with the Phoenix at this time. So Jean goes to the like white hot room and is like, in this other place, right, as part of the Phoenix Force. While she's there, as part of the conclusion to Grant Morrison's New X-Men, and I don't know if he wrote it or if somebody wrote these 2 pages because they were like transition pages. But after that, like futuristic Mark Silvestri story I mentioned earlier, which is the conclusion of New X-Men, Jean like gives like Scott like a little push to move on. So he's like at her gravesite, he's like upset, and she kind of like the inclination here is like she gives him this like psychic push to like kind of get over his grief and like move on and like not be just crying about her all the time, so to speak. That's why I read it. I'm pretty sure that's all canon in there, things like that.
Okay.
Then you get into Astonishing X-Men, pretty much right after that, or either immediately or sometime after that. And in Astonishing X-Men, they're in a relationship. They're sleeping together, Emma and Scott. You see some scenes in Astonishing X-Men where like Wolverine has a problem with that and he starts fighting with them. But that's the beginning of them having like a full-on kind of sexual relationship and being together. So it's kind of pushed on. It is somewhat abrupt because it's right after Jean dies. The seeds are laid because of that psychic affair, but it's also Jean kind of pushes him to do it. So the abruptness is sort of written into the story, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to take your word for all that, and we'll get to it eventually. I'm sure once they come out as epics or what have you, we'll read them eventually.
The Astonishing are out in epics. The New X-Men are out in epics. The conclusion that I just mentioned with the Mark Silvestri storyline comes out this year. That's
okay.
The third New X-Men, which will wrap up Grant Morrison's X-Men. So that part's not out in epic yet. But so I can't pull it down from the shelf and show you. But okay. I have the single issue somewhere. So.
Well, maybe when we get done with this the Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, where we're going through the Claremont X-Men era, maybe when we're done with all that, we throw some of that other X-Men stuff into the mix because don't want to overload X-Men. But for right now, we are going to overload with X-Men. Let's go to Uncanny X-Men number 513. All right, your thoughts on this one, Stojr?
I mean, Dotson art is something I feel like I should love, but like it's just okay. Like I'm always like a little like I like their art, but like I don't like them as fill-in artists. Like I almost want to like settle into that style and like just be in that style and like read a book in that style. But like whenever they like throw them in the middle of a storyline, so going from like Mark Silvestri to the Dotsons feels like I get whiplash a little bit with like the artistic style. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. The same thing happened to me in that Axis crossover. You probably didn't read it, but it was like in the 2000s. But you had like they were like in the middle of that story arc for the art. I forget who started off. Oh, it was like it was the Kuberts. It was like Adam Kubert or something like that. So like it went from this like certain style and then flipped over to this. It's like, oh, I wanted Adam to do the whole thing, and then you get the Dotsons in the middle. So I don't dislike their art. I just like I don't like them as fill-in artists because I feel like it's too abrupt of a change.
They do have a distinctive style.
Yeah. And I think they did draw that Trouble storyline. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I'm familiar with it. There's a part of me that thinks I read the first issue, but not the remainder. But I do remember that.
That was the Aunt May and the parents having fun back when they were kids. The story.
Yeah, I mostly think of the Dodsons when I think of there was a Spider-Man Black Cat miniseries. I think it was the cursed one that Kevin Smith was writing that never got finished until like 10 years later or something like that. And I enjoyed them on that, and the way they drew the Black Cat I thought was very good.
They did the Marvel Knights Spider-Man with Mark Miller, I think.
Did they do the whole
right after
run?
That. Yeah, well, it was like 10 issues or something like that. So I think it was them and like I think Frank Cho did a couple issues, but then like they did like the Like he might have done like the first two issues and then the last issue or something, and they did the whole middle of that Miller run. I always connect the Black Cat Evil That Men Do mini that you're talking about, and the Mark Miller, Marvel Knights Spider-Man first 12 issues, because the art styles look so similar,
Yeah.
and it came out I think around the same time, so they might have even connected story wise because Black Cat's in both and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um,
Um,
I like Cloak and Dagger here, and I think that the Dark X-Men thing would have been like a cool concept if it lasted longer. I know they got like a mini series out of it after this, but like I think that's kind of a cool concept. But I feel like it doesn't really go anywhere after this. So, what did you think?
Yeah. Back to what's going on between Scott and Emma, I'm kind of confused by that because Emma clearly seems to be working with the villains, but at least some of the characters acknowledge that too, that this seems to be confusing. So I think that's, a mystery that's going to be revealed later. I do like how Scott is representing the older, wiser X-Men who are going to think things through, but of course the younger mutants like Hellion are the ones who are creating more harm than good by their actions. I kind of mentioned that earlier. I am confused by some of the choices for Emma's West Coast Avengers / Hammer, right? I don't know why Cloak and Dagger would join this team. My understanding of Cloak and Dagger is they kind of have an inherent distrust over all authority because of what had happened to them and how they gained their powers. Maybe I'm, again, missing some context to explain why they're here, but I thought that was... I didn't understand why they would do that. And to that point, too, I thought Mimic was dead. Now, I did some quick search on this and found out that he apparently revived in the 90s when Wolverine came into contact with his body, and thus he mimicked Wolverine's healing factor and came back from the dead. So, okay, it's comics. I'm all right with that. But why does he have Cyclops' optic blast when Cyclops isn't there? I think even at one point they said that he can do all of the original X-Men's powers. Was it because of that short time he was on the team, he just permanently absorbed their powers or something?
I don't know the actual issue or answer, but my understanding was that Mimic like permanently absorbed the original Five's powers or four of the Five's powers. I don't know if he's got Jean's powers, but that was my understanding, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know, because again, I'm missing the context here, and we're in a period where we've done away with the citation captions, right? They don't want to tell you go see this issue to find out what happened. So that the historian in me is frustrated by that because I want to know, okay, if this happened, where can I go find it? I'm with you on the art. Something's off about Emma's face. She's too matronly. I think is the way I would put it with the Dodsons. But again, as I mentioned, I liked their work on the Spider-Man stuff. So anyway, let's go to Dark Avengers number 7.
Real quick, I'm surprised that you didn't bump into all of the extra characters that require immense backstory to understand who they are, and maybe that's because you just glossed over them.
Maybe. Which ones are we talking about?
You are welcome to ignore them because you don't have to. They're not like pivotal to the story. I didn't say that right the second time, but I'm not going to try a third. So you get Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
All right. So you get Weapon Omega, which is the guy that killed Alpha Flight in the in I guess it was New Avengers. After House of M and like absorbed all of the mutant powers or something like that. And so he's just like some innocent guy, but like he absorbs all this, like all of the mutant energy from all of the people that were like no more mutants or something like that, and like killed Alpha Flight. So he's just here randomly. You did touch upon like why Cloak and Dagger are here. I don't think they explain that. I think they might be in X-Men at this time or after this maybe or something like that.
They're not
There's
mutants,
some
are
question
they?
about whether they're mutants or not. What?
I was just asking
I think that they were going back and forth about whether they were mutants. They've always kind of played with that. Like Cloak and Dagger show up in the New Mutants book, and they almost join the New Mutants. But yeah, I didn't think that they were actually mutants. I thought they got their powers through that drug or manipulation or things like that.
I mean, maybe it's like the Deadpool thing of they pulled out some latent mutant powers or something. I don't know. You know, Stojr, to your point with with the Dark Beast and Weapon Omega at some point I just have to give up, right? there's so much context. There's too much context that you're expected to know that you can't keep up. And again, I think that's a frustration with this period of the modern era versus the classic comics. Is yes, there's context back then, but you at least get a little bit of explanation, some setup. In this, I'm just along for the ride now. I mean, what else can I do?
I'll leave you with one last one.
Okay.
Do you know who the long-haired blonde guy that is in the bar getting angry is?
I wish I could ask you what page number that's on, but we don't even have page numbers.
I'll show it up on the screen here.
The long-haired blonde guy. I think I put that together via context. Was that Avalanche?
That is not Avalanche.
No. Was Avalanche in the bar?
That is Adam X, the Extreme. He is technically the third Summers brother.
Okay, wait a minute. I thought the third Summers brother was a guy who was in space. Wasn't he called Vulcan? Or is he now the fourth Summers brother?
I think he's the fourth.
Good God, y'all.
Unless they retcon that Adam X is not the third Summers brother. But when Adam X was revealed in the 90s, it was Adam X, the Extreme with multiple X's. And he was
because it's the 90s.
The third Summers brother. But yeah, the Vulcan is who you're talking about. So yes,
all right.
So I will let us move on. But there are a plethora of characters that they just drop in here in this book.
Which a lot of them they had the little. I don't know if it's this issue or another one, but they have the little box that just kind of gives a brief introduction, their name, and kind of a little bit, and that's fine. That's sufficient. But all right,
They did that in this Superman book. Sorry, I thought I could turn around and grab this one here, this Legion of Superheroes book. And I always thought that was such a great idea because I don't know anything about the Legion of Superheroes. But, they had that similar concept. You could see these like red boxes. Yep. I know you can't read. But that similar concept of like, all right, we're going to throw a bunch of people on the screen, but we're going to tell you who they are and what their power set is. So I thought it was smart that they're doing it a little bit in this book too. So anyway.
All right, let's move on to Dark Avengers number 7. Let's see if we can pick up the pace here a little bit because I'm surprised at how long we're going on this already. Dark Avengers number 7. Stojr, quick thoughts.
Interesting that Matt writes the entire crossover here, like that Bendis isn't part of it, even though it's these are Dark Avengers issues. He's there's no like co-plotting, like Bendis just kind of checked out for these, but we get a different artist here, so maybe it was just him getting a break while he wrote it. Plot wise, you get Scott in a jetpack. It's kind of interesting. But,
yeah, sure.
You'll have to point out to me what issue they're sort of raising the island to, because again, I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around. I thought that they were living on Utopia at this time, and there was something, and like the asteroid M part was raised or something like that. But,
yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it's not in this issue, but I don't really have much to say about this issue, so I'll just move on to the next one. But in Uncanny X-Men 514, at the very end of that issue, you see one of the teams that Cyclops sent off on a secret mission, and I don't remember who's on the team because. I'm sorry, I do like the Dodson's art, but a lot of people just look the same. So I can't make out who it is, but you can see them at the very end of the issue underwater, kind of looking at this rock that has stuff built on it. And I think it's in the next issue that it gets pulled up. In terms of 514... this thing all feels a little bit of disjointed. We do have the mystery of why Emma's here and what she's doing, what's going on, and that's going to get revealed a little bit. I do like that what Emma's team is doing is it looks like they're doing what Norman wants them to do, but they're protecting civilians, so that's good. And this issue, we did get a little bit of a reason as to why Cloak and Dagger were with this team, that they kind of didn't want to be on the wrong side of the law anymore, that they wanted to kind of be on the straight and narrow, but it's still not too clear. But nonetheless. One thing before we get into the wrap-up, I've got another no prize.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, we've kind of already touched upon this, but the Clone Saga Award I am going to give to Terry and Rachel Dodson. All of their women characters in particular look the same. And don't get me wrong, again, I've said I like the Dodson's art, and Terry and Rachel are not the only ones who have this problem. J. Scott Campbell, right? A lot of his women look the same. Heck, even John Romita Sr., I'd be willing to argue that, Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy, when he gets into his groom, they pretty much look the same. But this panel just kind of stood out to me. I could not tell these characters apart if it weren't for their costumes, or at least in the case of Domino, the face paint, right? Otherwise, they all just look the same. Oh, hi, Izzy. My cat is yelling at me. Come here. Come here.
Yeah, I had a kid come in and start yelling. That's why I had to go on mute earlier.
That's okay. She wants to say hi. Although not really. I pick her up and she just wants to go away again. I told you, if you came in when we record, you're stuck here for the whole thing. All right. Let's go to Dark Avengers number 8, second to the last before wrapping up. Let's see. Stojr, did you have any comments on this, or should I just get into my thoughts?
Honestly, I'm even though I have read this, like, so maybe the big pull of all of this whole storyline is, to your point, like, is that this is where the island of Utopia comes from. But maybe it's because I jumped in knowing that, having read other things and after this, and just assumed that the island was always there. Like, maybe that's the whole point of this storyline, is to get us to the island. And I just like assumed that they were already on the island. So this whole storyline gets very confusing, right? I think that there was a lot of potential here. But I just like, at this point in the story, I'm just kind of lost, and I don't care, to be honest with you. Like, I'm ready to kind of just get to the end and get back to like the simpler Dark Avengers stuff, because there's just so many different things going on here, and it's all over the place for me. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I have similar feelings, and to that point, this is the issue. There it is, where the asteroid is. And again, I'm assuming that's Asteroid M. I don't know if that's explicitly said anywhere. Magneto's base that was once up in the Earth and King. Gosh, if it's that big, asteroid that big is what wiped out the dinosaurs, right? Well, maybe not. 4 miles across is the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Maybe that's not 4 miles, but still. Anyway, yeah, I don't really have much to say about this issue, to be honest. Let's just go on. This is the last one. Dark Avengers, X-Men Exodus. Let's see, Stojr, thoughts on this one?
I'm glad the storyline's over. I think there's some really strong art in here. I'm making sure I'm looking at the right issue. This is we get this is I'm trying to make sure I'm not confusing things here. But yeah, this is do we have the Dotsons on this, or this is a mix of Dodota and the Dotsons?
Yeah, gosh, the conclusion, you gotta, at least in the epic, you have to look at the front for that. So penciler is Mike Deodato Jr. with Terry Dodson. So yeah, it's a mix of the two.
Yeah, okay. So I was making sure I wasn't on the wrong issue, because as I'm flipping through it, I'm looking at the art to try and remind myself what's in this issue and what's not. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, like, I'm glad that they're wrapping things up. I'm confused by certain things, like, Emma's got this like little piece of the void that like gets left in her. I don't really think that storyline goes anywhere, to be honest with you. I don't remember it after this issue. You get a lot of this weirdness with like Charles, and he's in prison and him getting out. You get some of this stuff with like the Valkyrie, which is like this side quest that, maybe because I didn't read New Mutants yet, I'm not like as tied into why I care about any of this, and how Danny going and getting like this Valkyrie power is interesting. I think it's cool though, like to see all of these people drawn together, and how Scott uses the media to flip the script on Norman, and get what he wants. But ultimately, I'm just kind of happy that we're moving on and get back to the other stuff. What did you think?
Yeah, similar thoughts here. Some of this is kind of a mess. I appreciate what the creators were trying to do in the fight scene in this issue, but I thought it was so chaotic I just couldn't follow it. And I know that was kind of the point, but it felt like a mess. But kept jumping back and forth between different battles. I thought that was confusing. One thing I did think was interesting, and I'll pull up the comic viewer for this. I was able to move over to it without it being too disruptive. All right, so we get this scene here where Norman Osborn is declaring victory, which you can see on the right-hand page. And I wish I could tell you what page number it is, but we don't have that. He's holding his two fingers up, so that's very remnant of Richard Nixon during his when he resigned and left the White House, and the famous picture of him at the helicopter doing that. There's a part of me that also wonders if this is aping George W. Bush when he declared victory after capturing Saddam Hussein. If you look at the way they draw Osborn's face, I mean, tell me that doesn't look like George W. Bush. I feel like that's some political commentary that was done on purpose. I could be wrong, but
yeah, well, and I mean, so you're talking about George Bush the father after Hussein.
No, George W. Bush, so second George Bush.
Yeah, so that wouldn't have been Hussein, right? That would have been him declaring victory in wait, no, it was.
Yeah,
right? No,
because Saddam Hussein survived.
I'm arguing with the history teacher. About history. Was that when he captured him? I thought he was just like declaring victory prematurely. I thought that's what was.
Oh, you know what? You might be right. I might be forgetting that. When we invaded Iraq, there was that early claim of victory, and maybe it was before we caught Saddam Hussein. I don't remember, but it was that scene on the aircraft carrier.
Yeah, I know exactly. I'm on the same page with what he was there for. In my head, it's all tied to 9/11, and then I know.
I mean, it kind of is.
With everything with Hussein, but yeah, okay, all right, I'm on board. But yeah, I think that the Dotsons definitely sort of drew it that way. I'll mention that there's two books that I have in here, three books that I have in here that are not in your bind. So after this issue, at the end of this book, I have the Dark X-Men, which are kind of introduced here. I don't think there's anything really for me to talk about there. I don't remember anything about the Dark X-Men book. It was just a good place for me to put it in the custom bind. It's kind of forgettable. The other two, though, and that was like a 3-issue miniseries, so technically more than one issue, but just lumping it into one bucket. The next two are the Dark X-Men, The Confession, which kind of wraps up Emma and Scott's conversations here and any sort of betrayal that's happening. There's a lot of scenes in this book where that they kind of revisit and things like that. But it just kind of at the end of the day, it just kind of cements that Emma and Scott are going to have a psychic rapport, that they're together, they love each other, and any of this sort of like Emma going evil stuff was all just a red herring, and they're going to be on the same page, and they kind of forgive each other for what they've done. And some of this is sort of supposed to be painted in between the panels of what we just saw in the Dark Avenger in the Exodus book. So I have that in here. Not super interesting. But the other one that I have in here is Dark Reign the List X-Men, or X-Men the List. And I think that they should have included this because they included the X-Men crossover. So I think that what happens here in this Dark X-Men, or this X-Men the List, there was, I think, 7 or 8 books that got put out as one-shots where Norman had a list, and this was basically his hit list. He was going to go take people off the board. So you had like New Avengers, where they had to do with Hawkeye and stuff like that. You had Secret Warriors. You had X-Men. You had 2 Wolverine ones, one for the dad, one that was more about Punisher and Dark Wolverine. There was a Spider-Man one, obviously, and I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2. But what happens in this book is that Norman kind of manipulates the
the I'm blanking on her name. Oh, Maria. So are you a big
Oh,
Namor?
oh, Namor. Sorry, I thought I was going to say, are you talking about Maria Hill? But
No, no,
if it's
no. It's
Namor,
Maria Hill. So once upon a time, her name was Marina, Marrina, and she was Namor's wife, I think.
see, I'm not. There was a character in the Silver Age of a woman who loved Namor and wanted to be with him, but of course Namor was going after Sue Storm. I don't think that was her name though. I can't remember her name.
So
Of course, I
this
don't
is
have any of
somebody
my
that was
books near me.
somewhat Atlantean. So here's the panel. It's this character here in the middle.
Oh, that's not Namor. Oh wait, no, that's Namor on the side. I was going to say Namorita, but I thought that was like his sister or cousin or something. But yeah, I'm not just looking at that. I can't tell. I don't know.
Yeah. So so Norman basically transforms her into some like fish monster, like some eel monster,
Okay.
and sends her to attack Atlantis. And Namor has to kill her, and basically drops her on Norman's desk. Um, that's him leaving the Cabal. That's him being with the X-Men. That's the Atlanteans now move to off the coast of Utopia. So that's so now the Atlanteans are underwater, but right next to the X-Men, so they kind of have a concentration of power there. So there's a lot of like touches of that storyline of like the murder of the Atlanteans that we saw earlier in the Dark X-Men book, as well as Namor and the X-Men and things like that. So to me, like this book would have made perfect sense to be in here because of those plot lines. Because like where else are you going to put it? Like I guess it would fit in an X-Men book, but you still need that Cabal book that is not in theory collected anywhere too. So I think the first two issues that are definitely missing that should have been here are that Cabal book, and that the Dark Reign that introduced all this stuff, as well as this list book, and that's what I have it mapped to here. So
Okay. Yeah, and I can't speak to those issues because I haven't read them, but well, we'll hear my thoughts later. But yeah, I think there's a lot missing out of this book. Let's go to Dark Avengers number 9. This one is kind of a one-shot story, right? Ares discovers that his son Alexander has been skipping school and instead has been training with Nick Fury and his secret warriors. Well, Ares confronts Fury, but ultimately allows his son to choose his own path. All right, what's your thoughts here, Stoger?
I really like how like Ares is trying to be like this little almost like this moral center of the Dark Avengers, even though he's not necessarily a good guy. Like he hasn't necessarily done anything completely wrong. Like he's just a warrior that is signing up with the people that he thinks are best. The his son as part of the Secret Warriors is definitely the youngest of the group there. He's basically the god of fear. I think his name is Phobos. I don't know if they touch on that in this that much.
I don't think
So
so.
he's got like an insane power set for such a young person, which is why he's there. Everybody else in Secret Warriors is basically like teenagers or early 20s or something like that. Um, and they sort of draw them here very like large and looking cool, but they got their own series separate from this. But obviously he's very young. I really enjoyed this issue. The fact that Quake was never a huge character in the comics. I mean, she shows up enough, like she's not like completely forgotten. Is kind of criminal. I think she's like a really good character. She was really good on the Agents of Shield show. I don't know if you watched that when it was out. It wasn't always great, but it was in the early days of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like Agents of Shield, like tied into the movies. Like it was a pretty strong show, and one of the main characters on that show was Quake. So this was that sort of like crossover here. Um, but I do feel confused with like all this like Lindy stuff, how she got here, what's going on, what's real. Like I guess I get a good sense of it by the end of Dark Avengers, of the end of this book overall about like what's happening between Lindy and Bob, and what the order of operations here is. But Bendis is trying to show us like things from certain perspectives and then come back to it and revisit it from a different perspective later, and it gets confusing after a while.
I'm incredibly disappointed because we just started dropping a bunch of frames. I have no idea why. Was not overloading anything. So, yep. I fear this is going to be another Daredevil situation. Gosh. All right. I agree with you with Ares. I find his characterization interesting, and that he cares for his son, is concerned about what his son is doing. I think that's great. Ares is a god, so trying to attribute right or wrong, hero or villain to him, that's a little tough to do sometimes. But once again, I lack context for what's going on. I don't really know why Ares is here, or how long he's had a son, or I don't know what either his son or Ares' powers are. I mean, Ares I can piece together. He's big and strong and wields an axe. His son, yeah, you mentioned he has this fear power. I have no idea about that. I couldn't tell that from what we were reading here. So I can,
and there is a Dark Avengers Ares miniseries that I didn't collect, by the way. So,
well, that's good to know.
So they might dive a little bit deeper into some of that. It's like a 4-issue miniseries. But that was one I skipped, and which is why I didn't bind it, because I didn't have it. In retrospect, that would have made sense to go in here. Because Ares isn't really in any other books other than when the Dark Avengers show up as a team.
Yeah, what else would he show up in if not the Dark Avengers then? I mean, maybe you collect that in a Thor book, maybe? But no, Thor isn't around at this time.
Yeah, it would be by himself. I mean, other than, I don't know what's in that story, so I don't know if Phobos is in that story at all, so then it might make sense to put him in Secret Warriors, but yeah, I mean, basically Ares is, this is his only time where he shows up, and not to spoil things, but when you read Siege, you'll know why he doesn't show up for anything else for a little while.
Yeah. And, I can guess why Nick Fury is putting together a team. Of course he's putting together a team of Secret Warriors, but some more context would be nice. All right, let's go to our next story arc. I broke this up to be Dark Avengers number 10 through 12. All right, so when the Secretary of State's daughter goes missing in Dinosaur, Colorado, two things I love, right? Osborn sends the Dark Avengers to go investigate. Now, the Sentry is sent first, and he mysteriously disappears, which prompts the entirety of Hammer to be deployed. And they, too, disappear. And it seems that the Molecule Man has taken over Dinosaur since it's his hometown, and he just wants to be left alone. And when he makes these visitors disappear, he's also playing with their psyches. Well, Victoria Han comes down from the Hammer helicarrier. And I haven't really talked about Victoria Han. She's basically been hired to be Osborn's Maria Hill, right? His kind of second in command and so forth. Anyway, she comes down from the helicarrier and attempts to negotiate with the Molecule Man, and the Molecule Man does release Osborn, the Sentry, and the other Avengers. But the Sentry immediately destroys the Molecule Man and flies home, leaving Osborn with a different kind of mess to clean up. All right, so let's just look at Dark Avengers number 10 here, Stojr. What are your thoughts here?
I thought it started off with like a great like kind of horror vibe to things. I wonder if Bendis hates Man-Thing as much as he hates Alpha Flight, because like we just get him killed off in like one panel as a huge character. I mean, I would assume that Man-Thing's going to be okay. He's made of plants and stuff like that, but still, I don't understand how Bob's alive. It's the whole. I almost feel like it's purposely meant to be confusing and just be revealed later at this point, right? Like, there's no point in trying to figure it out, because what are his powers? Why is he alive? Didn't we just see him die? Like, what's going on? Like none of it makes any sense. I don't think it's supposed to make sense, and I don't think there's any context clues to figure it out either. You're just going to get this like sort of reveal later, which is not great, to be honest. Like, I mean, like that's one thing to say, like if you're reading this as like one book, and it might be okay to read the Epic Collection that way, but like if you're waiting a year and a half for all this stuff to come out, it was a little. It was just confusing at the time. We get those like Hawkeye sky bikes that you would have seen a lot in like West Coast Avengers, so that's kind of cool. And this was my first encounter with a Molecule Man. I had not read like Secret Wars or in detail, or Secret Wars 2, where he's or the new Secret Wars, because it wasn't out yet when this came out at that time. So seeing Molecule Man was kind of interesting and cool. What did you think?
Did you not? Have you not read the early Fantastic Four? Because he's like, I think he's issue 2 or 3 of Fantastic Fours. He comes in as a villain.
At the time that I originally read this, no, I had not.
Okay.
So I didn't have any Fantastic Four collected editions at that time. So I would have only been reading, whatever was out in the 90s and 2000s.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I knew him from the Fantastic Four, but I didn't know he made a comeback in the other issues because I mean he's probably one of the most overpowered villains in the Marvel universe in many ways. But anyway,
I mean, I knew he exists. I probably knew the name, but like I
right.
didn't like know anything about him. Is my point,
I'm going to start off by saying hell's yes to dinosaurs. Again, no hiding here. I'm in my dinosaur phase. I've never actually been to Dinosaur, Colorado, even though I'm from Colorado. I've never been there. I looked it up. It's in the northwest part of the state and kind of borders with Utah, and I just have never really spent any time up there. So I've got something to do the next time I go visit family. I like Bullseye's portrayal here. I think Bendis's writing does well to give him a very annoying and interruptive voice, which I think kind of fits his character. And the point that Norman makes of having to appease the Secretary of State, since that's where their funding comes from, I thought was an interesting exchange, and it's one that makes a lot of sense. I don't remember who it was who was asking, why are we bothering to do this? But yeah, Norman explains. Well, they're the ones who fund us, so of course we're gonna take care of his daughter, even though it's annoying and we don't want to do it. And I like that we're seeing Norman is really starting to come a little undone. He's not leaving the Iron Patriot armor if he's even in it at all, and that's being left a little ambiguous, I think. So clearly that paranoia is starting to come out in this issue.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I kind of didn't think about that. Like, is he even in the armor? Like,
yeah, because he's in that room that he doesn't want to come out of, right? Whenever Victoria Hand tries to talk to him, right? So, is he even in there?
Yeah, and I guess they dropped those hints in Avengers Tower that he might not be in the armor because of the way Victoria's talking to him. And I guess when Molecule Man interacts with him, you got to assume that he's in the armor.
Yeah,
but he could not be. I mean, yeah, it's a good point. Like, I was thinking about it more of like when he's interacting with Molecule Man, but then again, Molecule Man kind of messes with his head in the next issue. So
yeah, and actually to that point, when Molecule Man does mess with him, and maybe that's the next issue. You're right. Clearly he has to be there because how else does Molecule Man make him disappear, right? But I think it's maybe ambiguous in this one. So let's go ahead and go to Dark Avengers number 11. Thoughts here?
I think like Norman being like literally in the Spider-Man costume is kind of funny and ironic, given on the cover, given like what we get in Amazing Spider-Man right now. I just read an issue of him, in the Spider-Man costume today. So that's interesting. This is where we get your Beyonder stuff that was on the back cover. So they didn't want to really fully explain it, but that's the Beyonder, the big guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew that was the Beyonder, but that's clearly just a made-up manifestation of the Molecule Man,
right. Yeah. So the back cover is like playing around with the idea of like, not explaining what it is,
okay,
type of thing, right? Like I don't think Mephisto or the Beyonder or anybody else is actually there. We get a little bit of like a touch of that, like Sin's past is still here because we got pregnant Gwen. That's not great. And you get a backstory to Victoria, right? Like Bendis is introducing a strong character that is like on part of the bad guy team. She's she's a lesbian, so you get a little bit of like her relationship backstory. But and we'll talk about this more towards the end, like of the book. But like Victoria's hasn't up until this point hasn't done anything wrong or evil. She's trying to do the right thing in this situation. I think the way that Molecule Man deals with all of the different villains is all of the different Dark Avengers is pretty interesting, and how sort of overpowered he is and in control he is.
Yeah,
I never got the sense from now that I've gone back and read it. Right, so we were talking earlier about the way I read it when these issues came out, but now I know what I know about Molecule Man. I've never seen him so in control of things, even if he is a little crazy with like these sort of apparitions around him and stuff like that. So what about you?
Yeah, I do like how they depicted the Molecule Man as having these other characters, as kind of representing aspects of his psyche. Now, I couldn't quite exactly piece together if there's a pure representation of one always acts one way, another way. But still, to have these overpowering characters just seem to be under his thrall. Well, of course, Molecule Man can make whatever he wants because he can control molecules. So I thought that was neat. I like that they enlisted excuse me, sorry. I like that they enlisted Greg Horn to do some of the painted panels in the dream world that the Molecule Man created. I would have preferred that if they did that for each section of the dream world and not just for Norman or the Sentry, but by giving it that otherworldly look by using a different medium, I think makes a lot of sense, and it's very cool visually, so I enjoyed that. However, to that effect, I am going to pass out a no prize award here, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
All right, the Don't Scare Me Like That award does go to Greg Horn for his depiction of a pregnant Gwen Stacy confronting Norman Osborn wearing a Spider-Man suit. I know you touched on this, Stojr, but please, just let me forget that Sin's Past was ever a storyline. I literally jumped when I turned the page and I saw that. I was like, oh God, no, don't do this to Gwen. She's our pure princess, right? I know she's not, but that's...
Yeah. I'll give you one little extra custom binding information thing here.
Okay.
As we flip to the next issue, and that is the teases for the next issue include some other issues that are coming out at the same time, right? So, New Avengers 59, Secret Warriors 10, that's coming out at the same time, but Ares Dark Avengers number 2. So at the time, that Ares, it's not like that Ares miniseries was backstory to this stuff per se. That Dark Avengers Ares series was coming out at the same time.
Okay, I need to move us away from that image. All right, Dark Avengers number 12. Quick thoughts here, Stojr.
My quick thoughts on this were Sentry's powers make no sense. So I don't understand anything that's going on. But I do kind of love that at the end. Look, it's a beautiful issue, right? Like the art is just kind of amazing. These explosions that you see, of what's going on, the way they've drawn this stuff. But I love the last 2 pages of this issue. I love that Loki is really going to be the cause of all of this stuff coming back together. It really mirrors him bringing back, how he brought the Avengers together in Avengers number 1. And, ultimately, knowing what we know today, this is going to bring about that heroic age and the downfall of Norman. So the fact that Loki has been sort of like, prodding Norman and driving him nuts over here behind the scenes is a really cool thing. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I do think the Sentry's powers are a bit nuts. Is this showing us that the Sentry essentially has the same powers as the Molecule Man, but he never knew how to use them before? Maybe. It is a little weird.
I think that's what this issue is trying to say. I don't know if that holds or if it's true or whatever. But yeah, I think that's what this issue is trying to say.
Yeah. So, I think that's interesting and maybe good. We finally get an explanation of the Sentry's power, because so far as I know, we've never had that other than he has this opposite side of the void. And yeah, of course, he keeps getting blown up and destroyed a lot for being the most powerful superhero in the Marvel universe, right? He is constantly getting his head blown off or destroyed or whatever, and I think we saw that again here. My cat's being whiny again. It's this issue where I finally pieced together what those characters were around the Molecule Man, that I could work out who they were, right? We have the Enchantress, obviously. I figured out the Beyonder with his Jerry curls. Dormammu is there. Initially, I thought Dormammu was the Ghost Rider, but Dormammu makes a bit more sense. But I guess that's the problem of they gave him a visible skull, and that's why I thought Ghost Rider, which Dormammu traditionally you haven't really seen that. And I guess that's why the old character designs are kind of important, right? That you've established this visual language for them. But anyway, I'm happy I finally pieced that together. All right, should we move on?
All right, I have a quick inserted issue here that's not in the Epic Collection.
Okay.
I put in the Dark Reign, the Cabal issue here, which is different than the Siege, the Cabal issue that will come later. So this issue is completely unnecessary, but like there's no other spot to put it. So the whole point of this issue is basically they follow around each of the different members of the Cabal, and it's almost like a little bit of a fantasy that each of them has about how they would take things over, right? So there's a storyline where Doom is sort of like envisioning him sort of taking over different things. He gets Parker's the Hood's hood. We haven't seen the Hood a lot in this issue. He's only been in the Cabal issues, so that's not going to make a lot of sense. But he gets the Hood's hood, and he gets Norman tries to make a move on him. He kills Norman. He enslaves the Emma Frost, and then when Namor says something to him, he ends up killing Namor. And it ends with I'll get the land, right? So the idea is this is just kind of like in his head, a little bit of like a how would he take things over. There's another storyline with Emma, kind of takes through sort of her thoughts and her fantasizing as she sits at the table. Another one with the Hood, and things that are going on there that might connect a little bit more to his mini series. And then a similar one with Namor under the sea. And then finally, the more interesting one is Lady Loki and Doom. They're kind of having dinner together. Doom tries to, which I always love, by the way.
Doom. Yeah.
Doom tries to poison Lady Loki, but she kind of sees through it. She melts a Doom bot and then meets up with the real Doom. So there's just a lot of that kind of, that interesting interactions, but it's called Dinner with Doom. So I threw that issue in here before the annual in my custom bind. It doesn't really move any plots forward. It just kind of doubles down on just like none of these people are getting along. They're all sitting there at the table trying to figure out how to get one over on the other person.
But it feeds your sick fantasy of wanting to have a romantic dinner with Dr. Doom, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's gonna have some good food out there. So gotta like that.
All right, let's move on to Dark Avengers. Oops, went too far. Dark Avengers Annual number 1. Again, being an annual, this is kind of a one-shot. So Novar attempts to contact the Kree Supreme Intelligence to figure out just what the heck he's doing on Earth. And as he waits for a reply, he observes human interactions, but faces an interaction with the Sentry himself, who tries to bring him back to the Dark Avengers. Well, Novar escapes and received word from the Supreme Intelligence that he is to become the new protector of Earth, the true Captain Marvel, and not the fake one that Osborn wants. Well, with a new costume and a new power bands, Captain Marvel plans to do just that, but he's going to wait for the right time to strike back against Osborn and his team of thugs. All right, thoughts, Stojers?
I mean, it's interesting to like move the character forward. I mean, for me, this is the most interesting character development for this Captain Marvel, Marvel boy person that there's been. I wasn't a big fan of the miniseries that introduced him. He was purposely supposed to be a bit of like an angsty, pain in the ass teenager in that series. It was interesting to see him sort of mature and as soon as he realized Osborn's team is evil, like just leave. So like, in some ways he's like the smartest and most mature member out there. Like he got duped and he just straight up left. I like the hints that they have here of the Heroic Age coming back with Bucky and Steve kind of spying on him towards the end and seeing him. But we won't really see much of an interaction with this character again for quite a while until we get to the Heroic Age and he's kind of interacted with the real Avengers once they return. And even then, I don't think his character really goes anywhere, which is a little unfortunate. I wouldn't be able to tell you what he's doing today in the books. What did you think?
Yeah, similar feelings. I liked what this was setting up. I enjoyed the original Captain Marvel series, and I look forward to when we can eventually get Captain Marvel in epic format. I hope that. I hope that happens. And same thing, I don't recall anything ever coming out of this. But as I mentioned before, I'm entering my second comics dark age here when I was reading this stuff. So if anything came out, I probably just missed it because my reading shrunk down to just current issues of Amazing Spider-Man. And I think this is about the time I was buying the essentials and just reading them because they were cheaper and to get much more. I think his costume was stupid, though. I'm going to be straight up and say it. It's very bulky and bug-like. I'm not a fan of that costume.
Yeah, and like I said, I think I'm almost positive he shows up in, issues of New Avengers, the next series of New Avengers during the Heroic Age, and Avengers. But I don't know that he might get a solo issue in that 30-issue run or 35-issue run. But I don't know that his character ever goes anywhere after that. I can't remember.
All right, let's get to I think this is maybe our last story arc here. Dark Avengers 13 through 15? Is it really?
Yep, and I'm going to insert another issue, but this one more important. The Siege the Cabal issue. So I have that one bound in here. And the Siege of the Cabal obviously is setting up Siege. It has a lot of some pages here with Osborn and him kind of thinking things through. It feels like very much like a Dark Avengers issue, and it has the confrontation between Doom and Norman, which is sort of touched on in the 13 through 15 that we're about to go through, but you see it from like a different angle and a different perspective. So in this book, Siege of the Cabal, you basically see, at the other Cabal issues, there's been this sort of like, Norman at one end of the table, Doom at the other end of the table, but something behind Norman that, is like the power that he holds over Doom. And in this issue, he kind of strikes out and attacks Doom. And then Doom unleashes these, like, it's not him, it's a Doombot, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
But he unleashes these, like, sort of bugs, these, like, little, flying, like, drones, thousands of them upon Avengers Mansion. The Dark Avengers all have to kind of clear out. There's chaos, the Sentries coming down and getting involved. And ultimately, there's some political stuff that happens at the end, which kicks off Siege #1. So because we're not collecting Siege in here, like this feels like a critical issue. Like the Siege Dark Avengers issues that we're about to go into, 13 through 15, will touch on these events, and we'll get into that in a second. But also, don't touch on like the main story of Siege itself until you get to the last issue here. So Siege of the Cabal is definitely like Siege issue #0 in my opinion, or at least the Cabal version of that. Definitely feels like it's a Dark Avengers issue. I don't know why that issue's not collected. The last one I said was an extra kind of issue. I'd put it in the back of an Epic collection. This one feels like critical reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows? Hopefully we get other event epics beyond Annihilation, and maybe we'll get something like that in there. But all right, so for Dark Avengers 13 through 15, keeping the Sentry under control is becoming problematic for Norman. We learn that the Sentry is essentially a mentally ill drug addict who plays the role of a superhero and has become addicted to being a superhero. Or at least this is what Lindy, his wife, tells us. Well, the Void catches her saying this and her desire to kill him, and the Void concludes that Lindy needs to go. But Bob Reynolds, I was going to say the sane Sentry, but really not that, the Sentry, his alter ego, Bob Reynolds is determined to protect Lindy, his wife. Well, with this conflict ruling in the Sentry's head, or running through his head, he tries to kill himself by flying into the sun, which does not work, and the Void manages to take over. Flying back to Earth, the Void confronts Norman because of his manipulating of Bob, and essentially states that if Lindy were to die, that would be better for both the Void and for Rob. So, Norman either manufactures or takes advantage of an attack on Avengers Mansion to have Bullseye disappear with Lindy, murder her, and drop her into the ocean. Alright, Stojr, let's go for Avengers 13 here. Any quick thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, Avengers 13, we get like a lot of like the explanation and the things that I was alluding to earlier in the conversation of around, how they're giving us these scenes but not fully explaining them, and then they come back later and explain them. So we're getting all that explanation here. We don't get much of an explanation of like the flashback stuff of like the ancient world with the void and things like that. They kind of, other than it just, they have it mirror what's happening at Avengers Tower. So that part I don't really understand too much, but the filling in the gaps of between Bob getting his face blown off and how's he still alive, and Norman being able to control him and all of that stuff is really good. I'm glad we got that. I don't necessarily like that we had to wait 13 issues for it or whatever, however many issues it was, but that's some solid stuff. I like how Norman is pulling his strings here and basically has him hooked like a drug addict, and I think that's smart. It plays into his original origin, because when they tell his origin in the original books from different angles, you get like a more mature version of it. They almost tell it through the lens of like different like eras of comics. So when they tell it through the lens, and you see that a bit in this issue too, with like the black and white versus like the dot paper images. But when they tell it like from the lens of like a 60s comic, it's like, G. Willikers professor, right? And then when they tell it through the lens of something that's like more dark and gritty in the 90s, like he's more of that like realistic, like, oh no, he like broke into this place and was like seeking drugs and just took like the first chemicals he saw. So I think all this works. And we're just talking about the first one.
Yeah, just the first one.
All right, so the last comment is nice callback to Superman from The Dark Knight Returns with the lightning or the sun kind of darkness thing in there.
I think I missed that part, but well, we already know I don't really watch a whole lot of movies.
Oh no, this is the Dark Knight Returns, like the comic.
Oh,
like
the comic, The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. So in The Dark Knight Returns, Superman's like an agent of the state, and there's a part where he gets like a nuke goes off right in front of him, and he like turns into like he's like almost dying, and he looks exactly like that, and then he flies up into the sun and regenerates. So that's in the Dark Knight Returns from the 80s.
Well, I don't read a whole lot of DC, so that's also a problem of mine. Let's see. In terms of the Sentry and the drug thing, I'd kind of forgotten about the drug element of it until you were talking, and you kind of reminded me of that. At the same time, though, I'm not sure I quite get that Norman giving him the serum is feeding into a drug addiction, because he has why does he need to keep taking it? Because it doesn't give him his powers. It doesn't make his powers active, right? And maybe it is, just as you say, an addiction that he doesn't recognize. So I don't know. It was fine. I think the only other thing I thought of when I saw this is the cover there, the blue panel. You've already mentioned, Stojr, that this is feeding into the Siege crossover event, and this is something that it's missing on. It's missing on the cover there, because when they reproduce the covers in the modern era Epic collections, they don't include any of the words or anything. I seem to recall in the original that it has something like Siege crossover or something like that written in it. And we're at a period where a lot of these crossover events did have something that's specified on the cover, which I'm not sure maybe we still get that to an extent today, but it was very clear, like Civil War had that red band at the bottom half of every cover. Well, this is what they did for Siege, is they had this image of Asgard or whatever it is off to the side. Stojr, you have the originals in your book there. Is there any... Uh-oh, I lost you again. Maybe not. No. Just going a little slow. Yeah, I can. Sorry.
Yeah, so I got two things to show you. So here's the Dark Knight Superman issue.
Okay.
So that's kind of mimicking what we saw in this issue with the Sentry. And then you were asking about what the covers look like.
Yeah.
So
so yeah, there you go. You've got the Siege written on the side there at the bottom above the barcode, and then the title at the top there. So yeah. We don't get any of that writing in the Epic collection. It's just blank.
You get but you do get the little side panel, right?
Yeah, the side panels there.
And then as the issues go on, the coloring changes,
Yep.
almost as if like the sun setting or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. So the side panels there, it's just I don't know why they made that decision in the modern era epics to remove the title and give you just the artwork, and maybe it's because we've gotten to the point where the covers are really just that they're not vignettes from the stories anymore. They're just splash page. Well, not even a splash page. That's not even the right word. It's just a picture, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Dark Avengers number 14. Quick thoughts on this one. Ooh, the coloring I think is maybe a little different than the one you showed earlier.
Say that again. Sorry.
The coloring of the cover I think is maybe a little different than what you just showed. Can you show that cover again? Well, maybe not. Okay, that's just my poor memory.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think like I said, that side panel changes a little bit as they go forward
Yeah.
through this stuff. Um, I think there's some great art in this issue. The What was I saying? The I like how like the art looks a little different on the helicopter. Like it kind of breaks that scene up. I think. And I mentioned earlier that the Siege of the Cabal one shot has the scenes that we see here, but now from a different angle. So in this book, if I remember correctly, we're able to see that the Void is attacking Doom. Right? That's in this issue that we're seeing here?
Gosh, I don't even remember now. These
Um,
these modern era epics can be read so quickly that I finished this like I don't know 2 weeks ago, and now I'm forgetting. I'm relying very much on my notes.
oh no, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up the storylines here. So in this issue, unless it was at the beginning, yeah. But ultimately, though, like we're seeing things that we also saw in the Siege of the Cabal issue, but from like different camera angles is my point. So the Doom part's not in here, but the rest of it around the building, the chaos, things of that nature are in here. The reason why the Void is up there, um, and is it well, the reason why everybody's outside and stuff like that. Ultimately, some of that chaos there. So, um, oh no, you know what it is? I'm mixing up the next issue. Sorry, I
Okay.
apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, yeah, that's all in the that's all in 15.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we uh, we definitely get the crazy darkness of the void coming over Avengers Tower, and as you mentioned in the previous issue, that was hinted at as back in the ancient period. So one of the plagues brought upon by the Egyptians when Moses was in Egypt. Bendis is basically equating the void's power to that because it looks the same. So yeah, that's neat. Stojer, you'd mentioned before about how Victoria Hand is not really a bad person, right? And I feel like we really do see that in this issue. She is actually looking out for Osborn and the team, and she believes that they're what's best for the country. She's trying to do right by keeping Osborn in line, and we definitely get this. But at the same time, everything's falling apart, right? The Sentry's not in control. Norman is resorting to murder to take care of things, and again, I think this kind of helps prove the point that the Green Goblin is not the evil part of Norman. Norman is. The Goblin's the unhinged part. Now, I know modern Spider-Man is going to argue against that, but I still suspect we're going to get evil Norman coming out in the modern Spider-Man comics.
Mm-hmm.
All right, should we move to Dark Avengers number 15? We're getting close to wrapping this
Apparently,
up.
because I was so excited to talk about it, I was already talking about it. So,
Oh,
so yeah, I mean, like, yeah, this is the issue that switches the camera angle and shows what happens in that Siege of the Cabal issue from a different angle. It shows the chaos that lets the Sentry get separated from Lindy and Bullseye being able to take advantage of that. We get a little bit of a different art style on the airplane, the helicopter. This really sad moment where like you think that there's somebody's going to swoop in and save her, and it doesn't happen. And look, the Sentry's comics and appearances are so convoluted and confusing. I have no idea if she comes back from this or is resurrected or something weird happens. But for all intents and purposes of what's going to happen here and throughout the siege, she's dead and done with.
Yeah, I don't know what happens to Lindy after this either, to be honest. Heck, I'm not even sure what happens to the Sentry after this. I don't know if he's still a character that's kicking around or if he's been abandoned, to be honest. But I like that we're given the impression that the whole invasion of the building in this one is kind of a pretense to have Bullseye just murder Lindy. And I'm guessing that's part of the deal that Norman made with the Void to kind of off her. But you kind of mentioned you have your issue of the Siege, the Cabal in this, and my question is in the Epic, I don't have that, so I don't really know why the Cabal was meeting. I don't know where Namor is. We saw him siding with Emma Frost in the X-Men crossover, but is he missing for the same reason that Emma is missing? Why does Doom even care? I don't have that context in the Epic collection.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think that's the miss. I think there's two misses in this Epic collection. One, for as much as I love the fact that they have the complete story here, like this probably should have been 2 volumes. They probably should have padded this with some of the mini series, like the Ares series, because it's not going to have any other home to go anywhere else. We'll talk about this in after the next issue, but the Siege mini series should be in here. This is like too instrumental to some of these characters. And while 13 through 15 is fine, it doesn't, like the fact that it's part of the crossover, it's kind of off on its own. 16 is completely out of place and doesn't make any sense. So we'll talk about that one next. But yeah, the Cabal issues definitely should have been in here. I mean, this is showing it from another angle. Like you have a perspective here that, that Norman is rigging this up to murder Lindy. My perspective is this was his play to go after Doom that didn't work. Doom cares about Namor because Doom has an alliance with Namor. So he's like, where the hell is Namor? What'd you do with Namor? He doesn't know. I mean, Osborn had Namor on his hit list, so he tried to kill him. So he tried to kill a member of this council that they're all supposed to be allies. And that's what Doom's doing when he comes here. And then this thing that they've been lording over him, you finally flip the camera around and see, is that Norman has the Void on a leash right behind him. And that's a big reveal, but that big reveal doesn't land as much because you don't get the Cabal issues where he's been, like the camera angle's been reversed and you kind of have them, like, this whole idea of something behind him. And that this is what he's been using to control things. So I think that's definitely a miss. I really like this issue, but I feel like the other things should be in here.
Yeah. All right, and then I believe our final issue here, Dark Avengers number 16, and as you've hinted, Stojr, this is really an epilogue to the Siege event. With the heroes taking over, Norman and the Dark Avengers are imprisoned. The only exception is Dakin, or however you pronounce it, and Victoria Hand. Dakin escapes. Victoria Hand, she is interviewed by Captain America, who believes that she was trying to do what was right, and Captain America essentially hires her to become his assistant. All right, Stojr, your thoughts?
I mean, this issue is, if there's a bad issue in this book, it's this one, because there's no context for this issue. I don't necessarily. It's an epilogue to a story that we didn't get. And I think that's really frustrating. The Thor omnibus.
Uh-oh.
Camera fell.
Hello, ceiling. I like your your recessed lighting there, Stojr. It's one of those good upgrades you got to pay good money for.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Camera fell off the table. So yeah, the problem is that you don't get the mini series in this book, right? The whole point of that Siege 4-issue series is the heroes coming back and attacking Norman Osborn, after he makes a play to attack Asgard. You get, I mean, you're missing the death of Ares. I'm gonna have to spoil Siege because it's not in here, but you skip over it. So the Sentry rips Ares in
Jeez.
half.
No Comics Code
Um,
authority there.
right. The heroes are all teaming up to try and stop things. You get all of the Dark Avengers are in Siege because they're there. You get the triumphant return of all the heroes, attacking Norman. Um, and throughout this, you get Thor sort of returning to everything and attacking. I'm trying to fast forward to the page, but so the Sentry destroys Asgard and drops it on a city. Um, and you get Norman being the Green Goblin underneath the mask. So he has his like face painted. That's his like big downfall. You get the Void, kind of taking over, and ultimately Loki helping the Avengers to form again, getting murdered by the Sentry, and then I don't know if it's in here. One last thing. I guess it's yeah. So you get Thor killing the Sentry and then throwing him into the sun. So it's not exactly the panel that he dies on because he hits him a bunch of times. I was looking for him to more fully die. So you get
Yeah,
all of these Dark Avengers characters dying or things happening to them in that miniseries. Why wouldn't they include it in here? Like it doesn't make any sense. And I get the idea that they didn't want to collect the crossovers in some of these epics, but they changed their mind because they just announced that the next Thor new modern epic that comes out towards the end of this year will have the Fear Itself miniseries in it. Because it's a very Thor-centric miniseries. It makes
yeah.
perfect sense. So yeah, my problem with issue 16 is it should have had the Siege, a 4-issue miniseries in here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a fine wrap up, but it means very little without the event itself. I do like the way the Victoria hand was handled, and that Norman was trying to blame the Goblin for all of his problems. That's true to his character, right? But yeah, it's a mess. And boy, showing all that, I read the Siege. I don't remember much of it, but showing some of that stuff just kind of reminded me. It was. I feel like the Siege was the end of kind of a cool era where we had all these big crossovers and they meant something and they kept building and building and building. But then it was also starting to be too much. They were, come to think of it, the analogy is almost kind of like the end of the Infinity War movie in the MCU, right? They're trying to do it again with all the big build-up, but it just doesn't feel the same anymore, right? That's kind of how I feel like Siege was. It was the final end of all those various things, between House of M and Civil War and then the Secret Invasion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Fear Itself wasn't. It gets a little bit of flack. I kind of enjoyed that crossover, but yeah, there's not really like any big crossovers that happened after this for the next couple of years that really resonated. There was Fear Itself, and then the other one is like Age of Ultron, and I didn't like Age of Ultron at all. I think they were trying for something there that didn't really work. Like they tried to skip over the battle and put them in the dystopian future, and the battle was the cool part. Like I wanted to see that. And then, the next big one that was successful was Avengers versus X-Men. But, even if you like that, that's the plot of that's really, really thin. Like, it's just, let's put those characters together and have them fight. It's not really a deep storyline. So, yeah, I would agree. And look, this brings back the heroic era. It brings back, New Avengers and Avengers in more of a positive light. But, and we haven't had that since Bendis took over, right? If you think about it, like, we've had New Avengers, but it was like the street level stuff. We haven't had classic Avengers since Avengers Disassembled. And at the end of Siege, this brings that era back. And those stories are okay. They just don't go anywhere for a little while, and maybe that's fine, right? Like they just needed some time to to build up again. But they're not going to immediately turn around and crank out another ultra crossover event that's going to be great for everybody.
Yeah, I think, as I'm seeing here and reflecting on it, I think maybe part of the problem is that we get this big era of crossovers where they did really big things because they saw the success of the Ultimate line that was breaking all the toys in the toy box, and they're really thinking, why don't we do that in the actual Marvel universe, right? Bendis, for Marvel, he got his start in the Ultimate Spider-Man, right? And so now he's bringing that quote-unquote magic to the regular Marvel universe, and they do these big storylines that have ramifications, again, like Civil War, like Siege. But I think they also realize that there's a problem when you do that. When you break the toys in the toy box, how do you put them back together? Coming back from Civil War is incredibly difficult. When you have all of your heroes split into two, fight one another, how do you resolve those differences in a meaningful and realistic way? And I think that then hampers, after Siege, once they all come back together, I think that hampers events going forward because they're trying to have those big events but not break the toys anymore. And so it kind of makes the events feel hollow, like they don't really have any meaning because everything goes back to the status quo afterwards. So I think that, and maybe this is my personal philosophy, the events are great, but they should not be annual. 5 years at most, have a big event, and then you can kind of change things up, and that's okay. But when they're annual, it's overwhelming, and you can't have them be meaningful because once a year, and if they take 6 issues to do an event, well, you're doing half a year, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think spacing them out, smaller events, all those things make sense. And this was definitely this was definitely like an ending to the Dark Reign era. So this felt meaningful, right? It felt like you could understand that change. But yeah, some of those other ones, not so much.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about bonus material. Which, Stojr, I know you don't have any. I'm sorry.
I only got the issues that I put in there, but no bonus covers or anything like that. What you got in that one?
Well, if it makes you feel any better, there's some interesting stuff, but nothing earth-shattering. We get an interview that Brian Michael Bendis did with CBR. Hey, Superjop. Good to see you, man. Superjop is in the chat there. So we get an interview with Bendis by CBR. Back when CBR was good, I feel like they've just kind of become clickbait, although, granted, I've not really looked in the past year or so at CBR. Anyway, this interview is about Avengers Annual #1, and it also kind of reminded me about how I was able to follow some of this stuff because of interviews like what Bendis gave that spelled things out. I do kind of feel like there was a period in the 2000s where you had to keep an eye on social media and interview websites and so forth because some of the things are not spelled out clearly in the books. You're meant to infer them, but the writers clearly had a vision in place. So I feel like that we kind of got a little bit of that with that interview. We get some character sketches and some other sketches and plans for interiors and covers. Also in between issues, there are basic sketches that we get that are not included in the end bonus material. But like I said, interesting, nothing revelatory.
Well, again, with the idea that they put all 16 issues in one volume and didn't split this into 2 volumes. I have the Dark Reign Files, which is basically like the Marvel Handbook version for Norman Osborn.
That would have been great.
So that's a whole issue that they could have put in there. I mean, that makes perfect sense in there. It's actually pretty thick. Like there's no page numbers here, but it's not a couple pages. This is 30 or 40 pages here. And I feel like I'm not able to find it quickly, but I feel like I have that interview in here too, because I think they printed it in the back of one of those extra books that I added in. And since I have all the ads and the sort of letters pages and things like that, I think I also have that interview.
Okay. Well, let's get to our ratings here. Let me give my brief summary here. There's something here. There's something definitely in this book, but I think this volume, as it's presented to us, has a major flaw in that it is separated from the rest of the events going on in the Marvel Universe at the time. And while not specifically an event book, this title exists and it's bookended by two major events. And at the time it was published, a lot of other storylines were weaving around this book. And I think this... Very sorry about that. I think this volume suffers because we lack that context. And I vaguely remember what the Marvel Universe era was like at that time. And it was exciting, and this felt new and relevant, but it was also overwhelming, which led to my changing my reading habits and avoiding the various events and so forth. And I think this volume suffers from being removed from that wider world. So I'm going to give this one a 7.0. I can tell there's something good here in this book. It's just too just disjointed for me.
So I'm going to be a little higher. I feel like that because I read all of that rest of the Marvel Universe, this was the book that I didn't feel like I needed to be as connected to everything else, with the exceptions of the things that I already pointed out, like the Siege closing issues, right? I'm not bumping into the Molecule Man or the Morgan Le Fay or anything like that. And this is very much a character study of these characters. I've never gone back, nor have I felt like I've needed to read the Norman Osborn Thunderbolts era. I think I have like one trade up here that I happened to get at some point in time, but I've never been like, oh well, I didn't get the last couple of issues that led into Dark Avengers, so let me go look at them because I'm confused. So I've never read those issues, and I've never felt lost. So for me, for the big gaps here are the Cabal issues that are missing. Maybe those list issues, or at least the X-Men one for the X-Men crossover, as well as where Namor is, right? Because he's asking where Namor is. Doom's asking where Namor is at the in that issue 15. And some of those other extras in the Siege miniseries. I did find the interview that you were talking about here.
There you go.
By the way, it was printed at the end of the annual. It was in the back of the annual.
Wait, they actually put it in the annual, so an interview about the annual. Okay,
it was like hype pages. There's also there's also like some photos in here. I don't want to waste time and look for it, but there's some photos of like the writers at like Comic-Con that's also in here. It was in the back of some books. So yeah, they reprinted some of those things. So for me, I'm higher on this. I think the art is amazing. I think the storytelling is pretty solid for the most part. I think it really helps to explain why Norman falls and what he is. So for me, I'm going to go with an 8.5 for this. I think this is really fun. I'm going with my version being an 8.5 though, because I do think that the epic as printed is at least missing those Cabal issues, and especially missing the Siege issues.
Yep. All right, then between my 7 and your 8.5, that gives us a combined rating of 7.75 for this epic. I feel like we kind of need a website where we can collect all this stuff, or maybe I can make a post of our top rated and put those on YouTube or something. Let's see. Superjob says they are printing the entire Siege series in a Thor epic that's coming out later this year, I believe, which makes it an even weirder to me that it's not here. I think that's Sin's Past that they're doing, isn't it? Not Siege?
It's not. No, it's Fear itself. It's not.
That's why.
Yeah,
itself. Sin's Past. Yeah. That's the Spider-Man one.
The Fear itself 7-issue miniseries is being reprinted. I think that they already did I don't have the Thor Modern Epics because I have the Thor Omnis, but I thought that they already printed the Thor Modern Epics that are around Siege. I could be wrong. It doesn't have the Siege issues in them.
Yeah, Siege is when Thor comes back, isn't it? Because Thor went away after Ragnarok. No, am I wrong on that?
He's already back.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because Asgard is on Earth.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I have the Thor Modern Era epics, but again, I'm still a little mobily challenged, so I'm not gonna pull those out.
Yeah. So this omnibus is Straczynski and Gillen. And there's also another version of this that's just Straczynski, but when they reprinted this, they included the Gillen issues in there, so that it's not, you don't have a gap in the collection. So Siege is in the Matt Fraction one, I believe,
Mm.
which is this one here.
Yeah.
Unless Fear itself is in here. I might be mixing them up. I don't know. But
Well,
anyway, yeah, it's he's around for 2 epic collections at least, if not more, before Siege happens.
Yeah. Well, Super Job Ads, point aside, why not do the event here? And we agree with you. That's something that we were kind of saying. It needs to be here. This should be more than one volume. It really should. It's missing too much.
Yeah, agree.
All right, let's talk about where we're going from here. So next month, second Sunday of March, we are going to be reading Incredible Hulk Epic Collection Volume 8, The Curing of Dr. Banner. So as of right now, we're going to live stream that at 8 a.m. on March 8th. Stojr, we talked about moving that to 9 p.m., but God, look at this. We're already 2 hours and 40 minutes in, so maybe 8 o'clock is still the right move. But I know Sunday mornings is not the best time, but it's what works best for us. As for what's coming after that, the winner of the poll is going to be Captain America Epic Collection Volume 16, Streets of Poison. We'll live stream that April 12th, 8 a.m. So we've got that going. We do have a new poll up on the YouTube page for where we go from there. I've got the poll there before it went live. So same ones as last time. You can choose between Avengers Epic Collection number 18, Heavy Metal, Black Widow Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 1, The Itsy Bitsy Spider. Since we're no longer purely Marvel Epics, we've decided to add DC's finest Teen Titans, The Judas Contract. We had a lot of good feedback from that one-shot we did of the Teen Titans X-Men crossover, so we figured, why the heck not? Let's get that up there as an option. And then, of course, Thor Epic Collection Volume 25, The Dark Gods. Stojr, at what point do we mercy rule back Black Widow? She's been on the poll since we've started this. And while people have been voting for her, she's never made it past the finish line.
Yeah, I might have to kind of get it in there, or just cut her from the list at some point. So one or the other. Are you talking about, when you say mercy vote, are you talking about just doing it regardless of the poll, or are you talking about just removing her from the poll?
Well, we could do either, because I'm ready to talk about this one whenever you want to. I took notes on this one before we started doing the show, so we could do that whenever, or just remove it for the polls. Or we have been talking about how we're going to start issuing some short reviews, some quick hits, I think we're calling them, or at least I proposed that as a name. I could just record this as a quick short review and remove her from the poll, but she's on the poll for now, and we'll see where we go from there. All right. Otherwise, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I said phrasing.
Phrasing. Oh, sorry.
She's on the poll for now.
God. Yep, I guess I did say that. Well, there we go. This is how our show gets canceled only, 5 months in, 6 months in of us starting this? All right, so also we've got the fanfare episodes. We're going to do those fourth Sunday of each month. So next one is February 22nd. This is just general comic talk. We'll talk about our hauls of things that we've got in, and hopefully some other fun things. We haven't come up with a plan for the next one yet, but Stojr and I will talk behind the scenes about that. And then, of course, every day you're going to get a one-shot of the X-Men as we follow along with Curtis Finley's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club. We're still working through Volume 11. We'll be getting into Volume 12 sometime soon, and those episodes drop at 3 p.m. each day. And Stojr, we need to record some more. I'm not sure if we're going to have time.
Yeah, probably not this morning, but we'll talk. We'll find some time.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. All right, I think that is all I've got for today. Stojr, any other final thoughts?
I mean, I like these. I like reading things that I haven't read before. I think, like, for me, like these modern epics, like they're such a quicker read than the classic stuff. So it's interesting. The difference, right? So, like, I haven't read that Black Widow cover to cover, but I could probably very quickly catch up to you there, and get that done. Whereas, like, the Hulk, I'm looking forward to reading, but this is the 70s, so it's a little denser, it's a little slower, a lot more variety in it because it's one and done issues. So it's very interesting how that stuff differs. But otherwise, nope, good to go. Looking forward to the next episode.
Yep. All right. So once again, if you guys enjoy what we do, follow us on YouTube, subscribe, click like, do all that stuff that you're supposed to do for these shows, right? That all the creators beg you to do. Let's see. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yeah. If you want to follow us on social media, our link trees are in the description. Again, there's that poll on YouTube, and we'll always post the upcoming schedule on YouTube as well, plus our own socials. Sometimes things have to change for various reasons, for family or work, whatever the case may be. But if anything changes, we'll get those posted. All right. Well, thank you very much, Stojr. Thank you, Superjot, for being in the chat. Thank you, everyone else who is watching, who are watching, who watched, who will watch. All right. I'm rambling now. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.